Howdy, Internet, and welcome back to another edition of the ONETA Show, brought to you by PTE Creative. And it's a special one today because not only is this a crossover episode, it is officially the first episode of a new podcast brought to you from PT Creative. It's called the ONETA Movie Show, and we have our all-time host guest with us, our resident movie expert, our favorite bald man on the internet, Dylan Davies. And today we are launching our brand new project with the ONETA Movie Show. So on today's show, we have for everybody new project that we're starting. We're gonna have a lot of different projects on the ONETA Movie Show that we're gonna be going back and forth with. However, Dylan had a really fun idea so that we don't talk about just bad movies. We can talk about good movies too. However, we have a very high point, low point roller coaster movie, in my opinion. It's not great, but has a lot of good high points to it for today. But we're going to be going over.
I wouldn't go there.
It has a few high moments that are really cool. A few.
Okay.
And has some good stuff to talk about. But we're going to be doing number one box office movies from every single year. That is the goal of this start of this project. So we're going to continue the Cult Classic series as part of crossover episodes with the ONETA Show and the ONETA Movie Show. We're going to be doing a lot of different fun stuff over at the ONETA Movie Show here. But we're going to start with a new project. And today, of the number one box office hits, we are going to start with the 25th anniversary of this movie. Just to make sure we had a heavy discourse first episode. 1999's Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is the first box office movie that we're going to be covering. Now, we decided we're going to go random style on this, right? So we're just going to pick random years from now on.
Yeah, I think that'd work best.
Yeah, so we're going to do that. We're going to go maybe as early as 1965, but just kind of go from there. So you're going to get a lot of good old stuff in there. Same thing, you're going to get a lot of modern stuff and modern junk. And on that note, I think it's the best way to begin with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Do you have the box office number of how much money this made? I will look it up.
I don't, but I can look it up quick.
All right, go for it. Because obviously we all know it's Star Wars, and this was theoretically the movie, was supposed to be the movie of a generation. Theoretically.
Which is something I wanted to ask you is, comparing, obviously you won't remember the very first time you saw it, but comparing like when you were a kid to now, how do you view the movie?
Very differently, and shockingly enough, I do remember the first time we watched this.
Oh, you do?
Because
because I was only 5.
So yeah, you were born in 94. You were a fresh 5, so you hadn't even started kindergarten yet. I remember Dad picked us up from school, got into that shitty white Ford Taurus with the back seat that you could look backwards out of the trunk with. And all of a sudden...
You mean the best car?
Yeah, that was fun. I'm not going to lie. It's not great, but it was a reliable vehicle. Ironically, I owned one of those later, and it was silver. But that was actually my first car. It was a Ford Focus hatchback because they didn't really make the Taurus anymore at that point. But I just remember we got out of school, or I got out of school, you hadn't started, and Dad picked us up, which is so weird because I was like, why are we in the car? Because we for context, Dylan and I grew up 2 minutes away, a 2-minute walk or a 2-block walk away from our school. And we were religious walkers to school. And I remember we started, Dad picked us up, he handed you Qui-Gon Jinn's green lightsaber, he handed me Obi-Wan Kenobi's blue lightsaber, and he said, we're going to go watch a movie. It's called Star Wars. And I just went, all right. Like, I had no fucking idea. I had no clue. I don't know what day of the week it was. I know nothing. I just vividly remember being handed a lightsaber and saying, we're going to see this movie. And I can remember of the movie, of the scenes I remember being in the theater for. Because I think the first movie we saw in the theater was Tarzan. It's a possibility.
That makes sense.
I think we saw Tarzan the year before, and then we got to go to Star Wars. And mostly because Dad just brought us to movies he wanted to see half the time, and then that's how we liked half the same shit that he did.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna say, but most of them were fairly good movies.
yeah, fairly good movies that we at least enjoyed in some way, shape, or form. You and I both fucking loved Phantom Menace when we left. We were both huge Star Wars fans after that moment. But again, we were 6 and 5. Like, this is, you know. So I remember the scene of the convoys going over the Naboo fields, like the droid army, rounded big carrier tank things going across the fields. I remember that, and that's the one scene, and I kind of have a vague memory of the scene where Palpatine is talking to Darth Maul, and he's saying, "At last we'll reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we'll have our revenge." In Coruscant. That's the two scenes, oddly, that I kind of remember. Everything else is just blurred by how often I've watched this movie since. I'm sure you can tell by Dylan's tone versus mine. Dylan is far less of a fan of this movie than I am.
I would say I enjoyed it as a kid. Every kid enjoys Star Wars to some extent.
Generally, yeah.
And then now I just view it's just boring to me, honestly.
Again, I'm going to give an honest assessment throughout this podcast, as I always do. I'm generally pretty good at saying, even if I love something, yeah, this ain't good. In the last few years, I've not become a Star Wars apologist, but as someone who's trying to craft worlds himself and really loves world building, that's what I think is half the time the most interesting thing about fantasy is the world building aspects of it. When you add Clone Wars, Rebels, Ahsoka, like all these new properties, Mandalorian, that really enrich the galaxy of Star Wars, you can see a lot more of what George Lucas was trying to do. It's the execution of the plan, especially the start of Phantom Menace, is a really flawed start of this plan.
Yes.
And that's where I think we need to begin. I think the flaws immediately start with the opening crawl of the movie.
But real quick, the numbers, and this is probably adding in the re-releases,
with the 3D and that crap.
So worldwide is 1 million, just over 1 million.
1 billion,
and then international 558 mil, domestic 487.
That's
pretty good.
Pretty fucking impressive. I mean, the 90s were capped by this movie, so...
Yeah, I mean, considering Titanic came out 2 years before it, it's a little... But also, not every movie can be the craze that was Titanic.
Yeah, people forget how big of a craze that movie was. Titanic, it's the same thing that happened with Avatar. It wasn't super popular when it first got released. Do you know the story of 20th Century Fox's Titanic, right? Or is that...
I believe so, yeah.
20th Century
Fox.
Sure 20th Century Fox had such little faith in Titanic that it was either Cliffhanger or something like that. It was an action film starring, of all people, Howie Long. Yes, Howie Long, NFL commentator and National Football League Hall of Famer. He was trying to do the action hero thing when action heroes were kind of dying in the 90s. And Titanic...
Sounds like a great...
Titanic was part of the end of that era, essentially, where people just started going, we're just going to go pay for good movies. We're not just going to go pay to see stars anymore. But they had such little faith in Titanic because it just wasted so much money in their minds because they just kept bleeding money, that to show Titanic or to show Cliffhanger or Fire Sale or whatever generic-ass title of the movie that Howie Long was in, they made sure that theaters had to show Titanic. because they were coming out at a similar time or like around. So they said, if you want this movie, you have to show Titanic. And then theater chains
Which
were
doesn't make
dying.
sense. That's never made sense to me because as the studio, they've seen the movie. You know, it's not like they're gambling and saying, "Oh, this is actually a bad movie." They know the movie, so you would think they'd be able to tell.
I mean,
I guess it kind of just
it's a risky film though. I mean, it's a 3 hour plus movie. It's admittedly not all that exciting.
You would think, as people who literally make movies for a living, you can tell a difference between a good movie and a bad movie.
Yes, you should be able to watch it and go,
yeah.
Mm.
Which is part of the reason I don't like this movie.
Yeah, well, that's where we're gonna start immediately. We have $1 billion price tag that people have paid for this movie. It is, or was supposed to be, the cultural event of a generation. In a weird way, it kind of was. Just it ended up.
I would say it was.
It was a cultural event. It just wasn't a positive cultural event for many people.
Yeah. And there was a lot of convincing yourself that it was what you expected it to be.
Because again, the other thing is this film, ironically enough, in my opinion, has a few really cool high points where someone who's trying to come to terms with what it is may go, yeah, but like that lightsaber fight, or like, yeah, the pod race, or whatever the case may be. Those few highlights that people really enjoy about Phantom Menace. And it's a spectacle. No matter if you like the movie or not, it's beautiful and it's a visual spectacle. Especially for the time.
I don't love George Lucas's whole look overall, but it's well made for sure.
It's
a lot of good artists.
It's the art house of art house in terms of production value. And so, like, there's enough there that people trying to come to terms to the fact of what this movie was could go like, no, I love this movie. I love this movie. I love this movie. I love this movie. For those only on audio, I'm stabbing myself trying to say it.
No, I know all the ships were built practically as miniatures because Adam Savage from Mythbusters, he constantly talks about how he worked on this movie, and like the whole chrome ship was built and everything. So there's a lot of good artistry in the movie.
I mean, you can say what you want about this movie. You can't fault ILM. ILM did a phenomenal job making this movie and making these worlds and making Star Wars for a new generation. It's just, it wasn't the cultural touchstone that it was marketed to be. And it's the first, without question, I'm not saying there aren't great movies beforehand or movies that capture the imagination of the public prior to Star Wars. But Star Wars is truly the first cultural movie that just completely blows the world away.
I would argue Jaws was the first, but then Star Wars took it to a new level.
Yeah. Like, I knew you'd give me a little bit of pushback on Jaws, but like Star Wars is the cultural movie. If you had to pick one cultural movie in the world, whether you like Star Wars or not, you are wrong if you do not choose Star Wars. So
yeah,
it's a whole generation teaching that to their children, going to this movie,
yes,
and just getting stabbed through the heart. So here we go.
Because you got to think that a lot of the people that saw the movie would probably be, they saw Star Wars when they're 10, and now they're, in their 30s
with kids,
introducing their own kids to a property they already love.
Also known as our father, also known as all of our friends' dads at the time, and their moms and whoever else was into it. Like,
I would argue that's peak dad, is convincing your kids to like the stuff you like.
Yeah, and frankly, you don't have to convince, especially with two rowdy ass boys like we were, you don't have to convince us hard to be like, hey, Star Wars, you should like this. And we're both like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Like, I mean, shit, we loved everything Spielberg. We loved everything Star Wars. Like, I fucking love Wild Wild West, and Dad took us to that because he watched the Wild Wild West television show, and he was enamored with Will Smith in the '90s. Like,
Oh, everyone was.
yeah, like we loved all of that shit because Dad took it to it. So like that's where I think it's like this movie by itself is not great, and then
That's
you add the knife to the heart element for two generations, really. And that's why it becomes the cultural stinker. But
well. There's a lot more apologists for this movie in our age range
well, it was because I
than
was
there are adults.
well, that's
That
because it
so
was our Star Wars.
yes.
I mean, I remember my fucking 10th birthday was themed after Attack of the Clones. I was all in. I fucking loved these movies, and I'll be the first to tell you, Phantom Menace is not good. Attack of the Clones is
Trash.
bad, bad, and Revenge of the Sith is fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It has one spectacular scene, and that's about it.
And a lot of cool world building, a lot of cool visuals, but yes, it's one spectacle that has, when you really think about it, almost 30 years of storytelling put into that one spectacle. But yeah, so here we are, Phantom Menace. That was a very, very long intro, essentially, but I have beef immediately with the opening crawl.
Yeah. Let me try to find where my note was on that.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
ugh.
I wrote down excitement diminished immediately. They're talking about taxes and trade routes.
And that's the thing is, if you look, I didn't have enough time because unfortunately, once we had the idea for when we've been talking, like you clearly were getting more into the podcast, and we're enjoying your time with me doing the podcast, and we've really just have started getting more and more and wanting to do another project together. But by the time we finally decided to do this, I essentially had 2 days. And I'm in the process of moving, saying goodbye to all these people that I've met on the East Coast because I'm moving back to the Midwest now. And it's my last week of work with all of my kids. So I have no time right now. So I was just like, whatever I can fucking do to watch this movie, I'm going to. So last night I watched about an hour before I fell asleep. I'm not gonna lie, the time I took lunch today, I was watching Star Wars at my desk. But one of the first things about that crawl, I wanted to rewrite the whole thing. I would have loved to rewrite the whole thing just to set the mood. I think
I would rewrite the entire beginning. The first act, I would rewrite.
I'm not saying you're wrong on that, but I think if you just had to, like, if you were given the challenge, take the bones of the movie that we have and make the best of it, I think you can make this movie 5% better just by the crawl. Because the crawl sets you up for boredom. It sets you up with the expectation, what is this Star Wars? This isn't... Whereas if you just take out that first paragraph and you get straight to Jedi settling a dispute, you're kind of like, well, who cares what the dispute is? We got fucking Jedi. Like, one of them's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Let's fucking go.
It sets up a tone that is going to be inconsistent the entire time.
Very much so. Very much so. And it's hard for someone who loves the atmosphere and the world of Star Wars, knowing how much George Lucas was trying to play off of real life at that time. If you know that, you can see it and go, still not great execution, but I see what you're going for. But if you're just a normal moviegoer, taxes, trade routes, trade federation, you're just like, what the fuck happened to Luke Skywalker, bro? Like,
and arguably, a lot of the information is whatever.
it's fine.
It's just not. It's not consequential, really.
No, and that's where the opening crawl, I would have went straight to Like, you could even hint at the taxes and the bureaucracy problems, but you could say the Republic is failing, or the Republic is
Yeah,
at a standstill. Bureaucrats and greed control everything. The Jedi struggle to do it. At this very moment, 2 Jedi are being sent to Naboo to assist in a settlement. However, dark forces rule over much of the Trade Federation that's trying to. That way, immediately you're like, things are bad. We have a problem. We still have good guys trying to fight it. We already know these good guys because of the Skywalker lineage. One has the fucking name of one of the biggest characters we ever had. We're good to go. But immediately you're just set. It's like you said, you're set up for fucking boredom.
yeah. And pretty much my biggest question in this movie is, who are we truly supposed to care about? If you take away all the baked in nostalgia, who are we supposed to care about?
Yeah.
Qui-Gon Qui-Gon Jinn is boring. Obi-Wan is given nothing to do in this for the most part. And then Anakin you're supposed to care about, but
Yeah.
you really can't because it's pretty hard to connect.
Yeah. I mean, you're supposed to care about Anakin. Obi-Wan is done dirty by the rewrite of this film. Do you know that? Qui-Gon Jinn wasn't really a thing. Obi-Wan was supposed to be most of what Qui-Gon does.
Well, I wrote that in in my notes. I said, "Why is Qui-Gon Jinn in this movie?" It would be 10 times simpler and set up for the future way more if you just have Obi-Wan.
So the problem is this. It's again something that I still think fails, but is better if you know the details. Originally, apparently, Qui-Gon was supposed to be almost all Obi-Wan, and then maybe there was another Jedi that maybe did a little bit of what was going on. It was mostly Obi-Wan was taking this journey. And then they pretty much just went Qui-Gon because they knew Obi-Wan was coming up for the Darth Maul fight at the end. And by the way, if you need a spoiler warning for this, what the fuck are you doing? But especially,
Can I throw out an
yeah.
wouldn't wouldn't it be a better idea to have Obi-Wan have a Padawan already at the end fight scene? Darth Maul kills that Padawan, which is why he agrees to train Anakin.
That could work.
I mean,
and then you could have the
more.
well, it's kind of like a dark version of Batman and Robin then, where Batman loses Dick Grayson, he outgrows Robin, he gets Jason Todd, and Jason Todd at first is just like Dick Grayson light, and then when they started to put a little character into Jason Todd, nobody liked him because he, quote unquote, from Denny O'Neil, one of the editors of Batman, one of the greatest comic book professionals of all time, said, quote, he was a bit of a snot. And then people didn't like him, so they called saying, fucking kill this kid. We don't like him. But at the very least, you could, like, that's not a bad idea, because you could have Obi-Wan going, there's this kid that's so special. I may have to toy with breaking the Jedi code because he is that special. But I have my Padawan. I can't get rid of him. And then magically, he's kind of put in this place where he's not committed enough to one, he's too committed to another. Padawan dies, and then it's the constant, like, if I hadn't been focused on you, I could have saved them. So you could still have that contentious relationship that they set up in Attack of the Clones, and then the Clone Wars kind of peters that off, and then you see that they're actually friends and brotherly figures. But I don't hate that idea. I actually kind of think that idea could work. With Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, it's so abundantly clear that Obi-Wan has nothing to do in this film, and once you know that, you're like, oh, got it. You wrote it for Obi-Wan, and then you went, this doesn't really fit where, in our minds, it doesn't fit where we want Obi-Wan to go. So we're just going to give it to Qui-Gon.
Yeah. That doesn't make sense to me.
And so you're immediately seeing flaws in the film the first time you're going forward.
Because essentially, this whole trilogy is about three relationships: Anakin and Obi-Wan, Anakin and the Emperor, Anakin and Padme.
Yes.
Why not set those up as early as possible?
Very much so. And I think what's going to suck for some that are trying to get strictly this movie is you cannot, in 25 years' time now, narratively speaking, you can't separate it from the other two because it's essential. And that's part of the problem is people knew the second you said Anakin Skywalker, people knew this was the story of Darth Vader. How do we get to Darth Vader?
Yeah.
And
which is another problem.
And
because you know the ultimate outcome, which is always a hard thing to. It's a struggle.
Well, that's where I think that's where you can fantasy book a little bit, and I would have done something closer to your thing, where I would have had Anakin as a teenager, and I would have forced them to go back to Naboo, or forced them to go back to Tatooine for a mission, and then you can show that this young teenage Padawan has all these demons that he's had to deal with. And you could even get a little bit of Qui-Gon in there. And you could do that if you wanted to still and say, you know, and then that shows the care that the two have for each other, but that Anakin has demons. So that you already have the Emperor manipulating things and being like, I remember when you were first a child near me. I was so impressed. Being that dark father figure that he really needs. And Obi-Wan being like, dude, I lost my fucking master. I lost the only thing I had. And I got you, and I'm here for you, but I'm still not done growing up too. Like,
yeah,
that's how I would have done it. And then 2, you really set up Anakin's a hero, but he's got a dark side that we have to worry about. So then when you get to 3, people go, it's not that we didn't see this coming, but we understand why this is a tragedy. Not, you can't go from, all due respect to Jake Lloyd, he's a kid. What is he, 9 in this film when he's playing Anakin?
Something like that.
And his best role prior to that was in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, A Jingle All the Way.
But I think wasn't that his only role?
Possibly, I don't know. And I say with all due respect because he now deals with many mental health issues and he's been bullied for 25 years due to this film online. So, like, he's not had an easy life because of this. But when we're just talking about strictly the acting, it's hard to connect to this kid.
I don't blame him for being a bad actor.
No.
I blame George Lucas for sticking with him. If someone's not good enough to be in a movie, they're not good enough. He wouldn't do that with one of the adults.
I mean, George might. Others might not. But George might.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, like, have you seen the audition footage that they have in the behind-the-scenes stuff? There's like a whole community where there's another kid that does an Anakin reading, and everyone's like, "Why the fuck didn't you hire this kid? He's clearly better." But like,
well, I wanted to point out, literally the same year, Haley Joel Osment is nominated for an Oscar for Sixth Sense.
Yeah,
the same year.
So it's not as if
it's not like
boys of that age that could easily start this and do this.
Yes. Or if you're having trouble finding a younger actor, just make them a little bit older.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. The only thing that matters is he's too old for the Jedi Code. He's too old to be trained by the Jedi. So you're saying he's so fucking special, we're going to break all our rules, but we're going to take a huge gamble. So really, the older the better might actually be a good idea.
I was going to say, so therefore it would make more sense to make them older.
Yeah, I would love to one day, another project, we're going to talk a bunch of new projects on this show as they come up. I would love to do like a trade back and just do, okay, how would we have done this in hindsight to achieve the same goals? Because I'm already going like, how would I have written Anakin? How would I have done shit? Like, how am I going to do this kind of stuff?
I have an idea for that one already. Batman v Superman. Because that movie's a mess.
It is a total mess, and it hurts my feelings. And it and Ben Affleck is such a good Batman. He's just given Zack
True.
Snyder's diluted sense of what Batman is. I I really despise Zack Snyder's general take on superheroes, and Batman's the number one reason. But yeah, we that'll be another fun project that we can trade back and forth on. But going to this movie, I think you've already kind of touched on this. Way too many inconsistencies. You see it within the first 5 minutes. How do we know? We've seen Luke Skywalker. We know what a Jedi is. At the Return of the Jedi, Broski takes down Darth Vader, and he wins. He beats Vader. And then he shows the self-sacrifice where he probably couldn't beat Palpatine in that moment, but he shows the self-sacrifice and to show how good of a human a Jedi is supposed to be.
A redemption. Yeah, redemption.
So you have all those. So we know what a Jedi is. Immediately, we're told Jedi Knights, Keepers of the Peace. They're essentially superheroes. We know that. First line, I have a bad feeling about this. The next line, I don't feel anything. And you're like, you're a Jedi. What do you mean you don't feel anything? Like,
can I point out a line that I just laughed so hard at?
yeah.
When they first get to Tatooine and they're talking to Anakin, he's like, "Oh, did you come here to free the slaves?" And then Qui-Gon's like, "Nah, we just came for a part." It's just like, you're a force for good. You're supposed to be fighting for these people, but apparently not.
So
I gotta go.
Let's just talk about that immediately. Qui-Gon is not a good person. The way this movie portrays him, he's not a good dude.
He's like, you know that little chart of like neutral, chaotic, and all that.
Oh yeah,
he's like a neutral.
He's straight neutral. There's like, you could say like lawful neutral, but there's also some chaotic neutral there. But he's like dead center, where he's just like, nope. And like, he has his beliefs and he just sticks to his beliefs, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. He's just like, because I would say this. I find Qui-Gon Jinn to be cool. I do like him, and the myth behind Qui-Gon Jinn,
Liam Neeson.
It's mostly Liam Neeson's acting. He makes Qui-Gon compelling, in my opinion. But at the same time, like, the myth of Qui-Gon Jinn is what's important, not the actual character, because Qui-Gon sees the whole thing. Qui-Gon actually listens to the Force and just allows himself to be a tool of the Force, essentially. That's the whole reason Qui-Gon is important. But first and foremost, let's just start off the bat.
But we don't know that in this movie.
We don't know that enough, except in lines where he says, little things are the only things he cares about. That you can, in little lines, you can say, oh, he's a believer in the Force. When they get to Coruscant and they go against the Jedi Council, he's clearly like, nah, you're all a bunch of fucking idiots. The Force is telling us this is a good thing.
That's when he finally shows some character.
Right.
Before that, he's just dead even.
He's dead even Jedi Master. And just walk through this with me. He insults Jar Jar and thinks he's an idiot, which he's not wrong, but that's the first things out of his mouth. The guy says, you saved my life. I owe you a life debt. And he's like, no. And then immediately goes into Gunga City because it's convenient to him. And then in front of everyone says, he owes me a life debt. He's coming with me. And everyone's like, happy to get rid of him. And you're just like, he essentially takes Jar Jar as a slave, sort of. He's just like, no, fuck you. You're coming with me, dude.
You can argue that he noticed that he wasn't really accepted by the society, so maybe he's doing him a favor. But they don't play it like that.
No, and it's the same deal when it comes to his dealings with the Queen. The Queen and all the governors and stuff of Naboo, they're all dumb because they're all like, no, we need to stay. And he's like, dude, I'm telling you, you're going to die. You need to come with me. But the way he says it, he's just like, I feel you're about to be destroyed. But 15 minutes earlier, when you're on the ship and people are trying to actively kill him, he's like, I don't feel anything. And Obi-Wan's the one being like, this is not good. What are we doing? Like,
Uh,
and then you get to fucking Tatooine, and then he's just like, nah, didn't come to free slaves. And the way the movie is written is so poor, it makes him look like such a dick. He rigs the whole game, and you're like, he really cares about this kid. And doesn't fight for his mom at all. And like,
yeah.
once you know Star Wars, you can say, well, that's an attachment, that's a problem. But you can't do that because you are separating a child from their mother. And a good relationship between mother and child. Not bad one where you're like, we need to get this kid out of here.
Yeah. It is funny how little he cares about that mom.
Shmi is just an incubator for Anakin throughout this entire thing, and it's so bad when you actually look at her treatment. Because then one of the last scenes I actually got to watch while paying attention was that he wins the pod race. He comes home and he's like, "Oh, all this money's for you," and he's like, Anakin's like, "Whoa!" And then he tells his mom, and they're thrilled, and he's like, "Oh, you're no longer a slave," and that's it. He just says it in front of his mom, like, I got you freed. We good. And then he's like, what about mom? And he's like, I tried. And that was the level of him trying. I tried. Sure. And you're like, you are not a good person.
Well, he didn't try. That's the point.
The only thing that you can say he tried is he started with the boy and his mother. And he's like, no two slaves, never. And he's like, all right, fine, the boy. He just immediately goes, fuck it.
Yeah.
Because theoretically, he could have had Anakin win the race, take the winnings, and just said, I'm paying for Anakin now. They're both free. Or vice versa. He could have just take the money that Anakin won and just said, we're buying Shmi.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you're free now. And that would have made him look like such a wonderful human being. And then you could have said, okay, your boy's special. I'm sorry to do this to you. It's his choice. I am just observing the Force. I believe he should be trained because he could possibly be the most special Jedi of all time. And then it's truly a choice. He truly has the ability to stay or go, and he chooses that life. And the tragedy begins there, but at least he was given a choice. Instead, it's just like, he's coming with me. I'm not really giving you a choice.
I'm going to throw out a thought that I just thought about for 2 seconds. Why not have the mom also in the negotiation? Then it's her choice. Qui-Gon doesn't look like an asshole.
Yes.
And you understand the tragedy of it.
That she's willing to give up her, where he's just like, no two slaves, and she's like, I don't need to be a part of the deal. If Anakin can do this, I want him to be free. And you see that's a self-sacrifice of a mom. So then you have, when Anakin figures that out, there's so much more guilt there. He has so many more demons to deal with that you can say, Qui-Gon tried. Shmi tried and gave up her own freedom for Anakin. Now Anakin's got to deal with that guilt the rest of his life. Oh, and his new father figure that he clearly needs. Oh, BT Dub, he got stabbed through the heart. He's gone too. And he's stuck with his older brother who first starts by saying, why do I feel like we've picked up another pathetic life form?
Yeah.
Like, if you look back at the original Star Wars with Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi, he doesn't have a high opinion of, like, the criminals in the bar, but would you say he's just a condescending fuck? I wouldn't.
Well, he doesn't seem to care for anyone in this movie except Qui-Gon.
Very much. He's like, well, right is right. We should do right because it's right. But he doesn't seem to care. And, like, at first, and then oddly, the only other person you could say he kind of tries to care for, he at least takes an interest in Jar Jar. He at least, like, asks him questions, and at least you can say, like, well, he tried. Whereas like Qui-Gon's just like, you're a fucking idiot. I'm stuck with you and you're useful. It's
The it's a problem from the very start because think of In A New Hope. The entire first act, the entire what, 30 minutes? First 30 minutes is all about Luke.
Yep.
You understand his dreams, his hopes. You understand his family relationship. You understand he wants to get away. He wants to be something better.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you just take that and put it in the Anakin story? Start the whole movie with that. And then you have a perfect plot point for the first act. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan arriving.
Very much so. And they could still have the same, we rescued the Queen. There's an evil Federation. We need to go stop them. You could do the same thing.
You can easily insert that in a 2-minute scene setting up Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon.
Absolutely.
It's frustrating.
Well, I hate that you, like, one of the things about this, because I do have a soft spot for this movie. There are pieces of this that I really do enjoy. That I just go, it should take me more than 10 seconds to think of a better idea than what you gave me.
Yeah, you can tell that George Lucas is working with a bunch of yes men who are like, you made Star Wars, we'll go with whatever you want to do.
I don't even know
there's no
if it's
pushback.
I don't know if it's necessarily even that. I think it's when you look at the way he works, he actually is a pretty good collaborator when it comes to everything except the story. And unless it's someone that he's really like,
yeah.
Except if it's like something he's really like bullish about, he'll usually cave. Like, whereas like he was bullish and he was proven right beforehand, and that was the problem. He wasn't proven wrong in stories; he was proven right all the time. So when you have Lawrence Kasdan and Harrison Ford both going like, "Fuck it, kill Han Solo," and he's like, "No, he needs to be here. He's important," and ultimately, even in my opinion, I'd be like, "Yeah, this is the right call." You get to see why the rebellion's important even in Han Solo, because he goes from smuggler that only cares for himself, where now he's so inspired by his love for others that now he's going to go fight a war as a general for them. You're like, I think that's a good message.
Yeah.
That's an underlying thing. Whereas like he was right about so much early that he's like, no.
Well, I watched some behind the scene footage earlier. And I think it was the editor points out to George Lucas during the first time they're viewing it for the first time, the whole movie.
Yeah.
He points out in the last like there's like 90 seconds where you have Jar Jar being a total idiot but somehow succeeding. You have kind of like a mournful thing for Qui-Gon dying. You have like rage and you want to be triumphant with Obi-Wan, and then you have whatever Padme's fucking doing. So just that tone in that 90 seconds is a mess. And then his reaction to that, he said, "It's bold."
Oh God, I don't even know if I remember that scene, but I'm sure I probably have seen it. Oh, it's so problematic. It's so problematic. Like, I think one of the things is when you go back and watch A New Hope, say what you will, that shit's clean. Where it's just like, it's coherent, straightforward. I have 4 characters. I really have, if you want to count Vader, 5. But there's 4 characters to worry about. And then everyone else is just there for fun shit. You're supposed to care about Luke. You're supposed to care about Leia, Han, and Obi-Wan you're supposed to care about.
There's a reason that people still talk about the structure of the first one. Yeah. Because in terms of just structure, it's a perfect hero's journey.
Absolutely.
Really.
Absolutely.
Everything converges into one simple goal at the end. You don't have 4 different things happening at the same time with different tones.
Yeah. And then you come to this, and it's just a jumbled mess of... If you look at this, if you wanted to set up everything they set up in this movie needs to be 3 movies. It really does, because you need... I'm not saying you couldn't succeed, But if you wanted to go the route of really build, like I think one thing this movie suffers from, and it's an easy way to say it, because you can see it from scene one of the opening crawl all the way to the final scene in the movie. This movie definitely suffers from world building.
Yeah,
It's
it's yeah.
it,
The
it's immediately
the
apparent that we're trying to do way too much in this movie.
it's overly written to a point that it becomes almost incoherent at times.
And it allows the mind to nitpick. It allows because you're constantly trying to find the messaging, find what you're supposed to care about, that it forces you to constantly be like, what is this? What is that? What is this? Instead of just watching the movie and enjoying the movie. Like,
Or
that's one of the things that, like, anything from old cinema that you love, take it from you can take it from one of my favorite films of all time, Casablanca, all the way to Top Gun Maverick or The Batman in a more modern context, where there's still flaws in every movie. There's flaws in the movies I just pointed out. The Batman is 3 hours long. But when you're watching the execution of the Batman, unless it's just something that really bothers you, you're not just going, wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what? You're enthralled in the story and what you're doing. You're just, it turns.
the main difference is when you're watching this movie, you're constantly asking why. All those movies you just said, there's a cause and effect, a cause and effect. It's constantly doing that. They're setting up beats and they're paying them off.
Oh, yeah.
This is just a scramble.
Why? And it's loosely, like, I had this thought. So I think we should do it like this. Let's just do chunks of the movie and kind of go from here. Because we're doing a great, like, overarching stuff right now. Let's go start of Naboo to leaving Naboo. What are our notes on that one? For the first time leaving Naboo. Getting to and leaving.
I mean, I shouldn't say the only problem, but the only thing I really wrote down was you have Jar Jar Binks, a character who's never been introduced. Why would you have him speak in a way that is both annoying and, like, wildly just unlikable, really?
Unlikable, ignorant, and one could possibly even say racist if they know the connotation of some of the history that it is clearly backed into it, sort of.
Yeah, it's like, but why would they go that way?
Because
you can say he's trying to appeal to kids, maybe.
I mean that I think
that's the only thing I can think of.
I think it's another one of those inconsistencies. I've seen too many interviews now with George Lucas. I don't think he's right. I still think that he's really flawed, but I think he actually might truly believe I make these movies for kids. Having said that, there are too many inconsistencies. There are too many inconsistencies if you're trying to do that.
And you can't also set up politics in Star Wars if you're aiming for kids. They don't care.
And that's the thing. You could say politics, but it's got to be incredibly simple, incredibly clear. Bad guys lying to us and he's trying to hurt us. Good guys trying to fix it. Great. Yeah. It can't be, oh, well, like when you hear the behind the scenes stuff of it, he compares Chancellor Valorum to Clinton at the end of his term. Where Clinton, oh, good man, like his commentary on it. Clinton, good man, you know, he's done good, but he's tired, he's at the end of his term, and bureaucracy and corporations and all these people are not allowing him to function well enough. This is George Lucas's commentary on it. It's not me making it up. And you're like, okay, that's an interesting concept. I have no issue if you explore that. But then you also can't turn around and say, well, I make these movies for kids, so I have funny haha Jar Jar, and you're like, these are two diametrically opposed ideas that you can't do simultaneously. You
Yeah.
have to pick one or the other. And it's fine if you do either. I don't like the execution of Jar Jar, but if you want to say we can go down that route, you pick it and you go with it. You don't play back and forth. And
Yeah.
I think that's where, like, immediately, too many inconsistencies. I wrote it within 5 minutes of the movie. Jedi have no consistencies. The droids have no consistencies. The Trade Federation, why do they need a stereotypical Japanese Asian accent? Makes no sense. And then you get to Jar Jar. Jar Jar is a blithering idiot who can be compared to a racist cartoon stereotype from the 30s, which that's really in-depth. You have to really know that at this point in the world, but still, maybe just avoid that in general. Just me.
Yeah. You could say because George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and all them, they grew up on all these serials that were
Racist.
at times wildly racist.
Yes.
So you can argue he's just pulling stuff from his childhood, but you should at least have the awareness of the modern,
Yeah.
the modern way of thinking.
Yeah. And then you go to even simple stuff. How is Jar Jar, who can barely stand, who can barely speak, who can barely function in coherence, how does he do a triple turning backflip dive into the lake? How is he both the clumsiest motherfucker on the planet, but also the greatest Olympic diver that's ever existed? Those two are very different. How does that work?
Yeah.
And then you go, my next commentary is, how is this lake so goddamn deep? How did we go from a lake in a forest to, no, this is a secret ocean?
Yeah, I was going to say, they should just make it an ocean. It would make 10 times more sense.
It's like, it's an underground lake ocean that apparently the core of the planet is an ocean? But all we ever see of the planet is land? It feels too distant, man.
One of the things I like about Naboo, though, is it's one of the only planets that has multiple things.
Yes.
It's not just Hoth, snow, Coruscant, a city.
Yeah.
That's not
Tatooine,
how work.
Desert. Yeah, like, there are things there. Mustafar, fucking volcano. Like, yeah, like, I think when you get to expanded lore, you can see some differences in some of those. But yeah, Naboo is the first real Star Wars planet that's not just a thing.
One, yeah.
And so, like, that I like about Naboo. And, like, swimming to Gunga City. Gunga City looks beautiful.
It looks good.
The droids look great going in. The creatures look good. Gunga City is next level beautiful. Like, you go up and you're like, and the John Williams music for this entire movie is excellent. It's almost as if
he's one of the saving.
Absolutely. It's as if had they just had the actors speak 25 to 50% less and just let the music do the talking, we probably would have had a better movie just entirely, because you'd be relying on the music of John Williams to really do that. Like, it's kind of like this. If you look at, because I'm on YouTube Shorts and other stuff all the time, and I get a ton of Star Wars stuff. If you look at a YouTube short or just like a small clip of Anakin and Padme's love story with John Williams music and just the snippets of the clips without a lot of the dialogue, you're like, what a beautiful little love story there. That makes coherent sense.
The love theme for Anakin and Padme across the stars,
beautiful.
I think is just as strong as Han and Leia's theme.
Absolutely. I think the best thing to come out of the prequels, besides the world building that allows Star Wars to expand, because I think that's been proven to be good, it's just the execution and starting that wasn't good. But if you're talking about just the movies themselves, the John Williams music is by far the best part. Duel of the Fates is classic. Across the Stars is beautiful. All the little pieces through everything are just wildly successful and incredibly moving.
And to go off of something you said, think of In A New Hope, you have that iconic shot of Luke looking at the two suns.
Yes.
The music's playing. You understand Luke's character without any dialogue. He doesn't have to say a word.
You just saying, like, I'm
Just
not
do
kidding. If I can get close enough. You just saying Luke, twin sons, and I heard the music and I got goosebumps just thinking about because how special
Yes.
that is now to me.
And it's iconic because the music.
Yes.
You have a master who's, I would say, the best composer of all time.
No one's close.
For films, at least.
No one's close.
Yeah. Why not let him do some of the heavy lifting?
Yeah.
That's what music is for.
It's the same deal. When I love going, like we've always talked about this behind the scenes. Back to the Future. Robert Zemeckis immediately, he went and got Alan Silvestri because he said, I don't have a big movie. When you actually look at this movie, it's not very big. I want it to feel bigger. I need the scope of the movie to feel bigger. And I think Alan Silvestri's music is going to achieve that for me. And then with the Back to the Future score and all the music he did, Back to the Future feels like an epic. But when you actually look at it, it's almost very one camera. We're in one place. Yeah. We're in one room. We're in one thing. You don't do a lot of movement.
And you never leave that town.
Absolutely. And so the music does a ton of heavy lifting for that film. And here, they're silent. It's Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon swimming behind Jar Jar. That 20 seconds to swim to Gunga City with just the mysterious music of John Williams, that's Star Wars. That's fucking Chef Kiss. That's phenomenal. And then they have to talk again. And it just feels like that all the time.
And it's almost like they constantly feel the need to fill the void that's no one's speaking. And that's a problem because that just means it's overwritten like crazy.
Yes. And that's something that beyond the classic, you got to kill your darlings. It's what every writer has to learn, especially writers that love writing dialogue. I have to do it all the time. I'm not saying I'm some successful fucking Hollywood writer, but I have written movies. You've written movies. We haven't shared them with many people, but I've shared mine with quite a few people now. And one of the biggest things I always get back is, especially when I read it myself, is I'm like, why did I write this? Like, why is there so much dialogue in this moment? I gotta let this breathe. I gotta let it kind of take over, but you're so stuck in, well, did I explain it? Did that really get the point across? That you add those things, and then you realize, I don't know if I needed that.
Yeah, and it almost seems like George Lucas never really asked himself, is there a way, instead of them telling us this, to show it?
Yeah.
There's way too much of that in this movie.
Absolutely. And so you look at the whole sequence of Naboo. Ironically enough, because love Raiders, love early Star Wars. I love all those movies that it's just go, 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 go. But when you actually look at A New Hope, there's a lot of down, quieter times to allow the audience to breathe. There is not a moment to breathe in this film until we get to Tatooine. Not a one. You're like, Trade Federation. Chase through the Trade Federation trip. Now we're down to the planet. The fucking things are just taking out the forest and try to kill everyone. Now we're going to an underwater city. Now we're being chased by giant prehistoric fucking monsters, which look beautiful, by the way. They look great.
They still look good.
And they are scary and crazy kaiju looking things. That shit's good. But we're going straight to that. Oh, by the way, the queen's been abducted, so we have to save the queen. We're going to slash shit with lightsabers. We're going to go straight to the hangar. Now we got to fly off. Now the plane gets shot. Oh no, R2's got to save that shit. Oh no, now we got to get through. We're to Tatooine. And you're like, we're 40 minutes into this movie. and not a single breath was had, and it's not paced like Mad Max where it's intentionally meant to be like that and just ramping it up. This is just, where is your audience for the moment? Where's that moment for the audience to breathe? To just allow Star Wars to just let it be. Let it go.
It's in those slower, calmer moments that you learn character, and you also can expand on world building way more than you can in an action set piece.
Absolutely. Like, it is flabbergasting to me. Obi-Wan has barely anything to do in this film. And in the beginning,
until the end, yeah.
You really could have saw Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. You could have done that shot simultaneously of them both running and cut back between the two of them. You maybe even, like, I'm not saying you should have, but you could have even elongated that scene to make sure they each got equal time. And then you could say they're coming to meet and Jar Jar fucked it up. So it's more of a mutual thing instead of just Qui-Gon meets him, Qui-Gon's got the problem, and Obi-Wan's there. It's a mutual thing, and then you can still say Obi-Wan is there. Obi-Wan has something to do.
That's how I would describe Obi-Wan this entire movie. He's there. That's it.
You know, we're transporting a queen. Instead of just going, well, here's this fucking slave kid that's really special. Maybe a few more scenes where you have Obi-Wan being put into a stressful situation where he's like, where, you know, the queen is on the ship and going like, what are we doing? Why are we doing the things we do? We need to get the hell out of here. And he has to be stuck in the, we're trying everything we can. We're doing the best we can. Instead, you get like one scene because of like, well, we got to give him something. It's got to be far more of like, he has to be put in that position of stress where now he has to be not young man of action, I can complete the Jedi trials. He has to be a delegator. He has to show why he's so talented as just a negotiator and a human being. Why he is wise. Where he can say, we need you to be patient. We understand. This is extremely difficult. I'm telling you this not to hurt you, but to give you the best chance to actually save your people. If you do the things I'm asking you to do, we may have a chance to make this work. If you act too rashly, we're all fucked. That shows so much more for even, you could do the same shit and he could sit on the sidelines and then you could say, Obi-Wan's a fucking G. He knows what he's doing. Listen to him.
You need to give him things. You need to give him problems that he needs to get out of.
Yes.
That's pretty much what a movie is.
Yeah.
A problem arises, then you need to find a solution.
Yes.
Another problem arises, another solution.
Oh,
which
God.
they do with R2-D2, but they don't do with anyone else.
We give Anakin plenty of fucking problems. Anakin solves them. Weirdly,
Yeah,
but he
true.
does.
Yeah. Just before we move on past Naboo, I wanted to bring up, they did this in Madam Web too, with one of the main characters, right? You got Padme.
Sure.
Who, one of the main four, I would say, in this movie.
I would agree with that.
What did they do for her character? They have her show absolutely no emotion at all.
Now, Padme,
why would that make us connect with?
Padme's not likable in the slightest. Padme
No, she's
is not. I think this is where my real problems with Natalie Portman start. I've never really been drawn to Natalie Portman as an actress. I know she's talented. It's clear that she's talented. But a lot of the stuff that I've seen her in, a lot of the popular stuff, it's just hyper problematic. There's things that I'm just like, what are we doing? And you're dead on. What about Padme says, I really like her, or like she's really good, or like, you know, I care about her,
or even, what is her character? Like, what is her character traits?
Yeah.
She cares for people because she says it. That's it.
Very much so. She's
And then
and it's so wooden, it's so hollow half the time. It's like when she disagrees with Qui-Gon, and ironically enough, I think one of the things they kind of succeed at, because the voice does a little bit, they change the voice up a little bit, and with such the heavy white paint, with so much costuming, and then handmade in Padme, obviously as an adult, when you're paying attention, you're like, same person.
it's very easy, yeah.
But they do enough switching and enough things that you're kind of like, okay.
Well, it's very easy. Now, like, when you know it, it's so easy to see that it's Keira Knightley
Yes.
and not Natalie Portman. It's so funny.
Yes. But at the same time, it kind of works. It kind of does.
But not with the problem with that, but the problem with the whole Padme character is once you have a shaky foundation where you show her with no emotion, Natalie Portman, she can't take the character anywhere without starting at that point.
Yes.
You know, she can slowly show emotion, I guess, which she somewhat does in Revenge of the Sith, I guess, but
she ain't in that much either, so it's tough. Like,
exactly, she plays it wooden. George Lucas, for some reason, wanted her to play it that way, and then she kept playing it that way because she is a good actress.
yes. And that's the thing, is like, I'm not crazy about what they did with the last Thor movie. And yes, she's 20 years older now, but I believe that she loves Chris Hemsworth Thor in Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm not crazy about the movie. I don't like the movie, but I can tell you, like, I buy that. I buy their chemistry. I buy their story. We're here.
She has an Oscar.
Yeah.
She can act.
And she clearly showed she could act early on. We were just playing there's a board game called Blockbuster. Have you ever played that before? And it's like you have to act it out. You get one word, and there's a quote and you have to describe movies to people. So we were just playing that with friends last night, and one of the cards I got was Leon the Professional, and of course I haven't seen Leon the Professional all the way through, so I'm kind of like, shit, it didn't work for the game. But I was like, we were talking about Phantom Menace, and then that one came up, and I was like, a lot of Natalie Portman coming up in life right now. Interesting. But when she is not Queen Amidala, who's intentionally supposed to be very stoic, I am a ruler that's under control, Padme, I think, is written in a way that you're supposed to be able to get more emotion from her, but the delivery is so bad that what is Natalie Portman supposed to do with that character? What is she supposed to do?
And even from the start, from A New Hope, George Lucas's dialogue has been wooden. Like, all the actors who worked on it say that. Every actor who's worked with them in the prequels will admit that it's not great dialogue. Yeah.
Right.
So you're already at a disadvantage.
Absolutely. Like, look at, did you watch Ahsoka on Disney Plus? So I would highly recommend it. I actually do really like Ahsoka. But they have an episode with Hayden Christensen in a vision, spoilers, in a vision with Ahsoka in the world between worlds. It's extended universe stuff for Star Wars that's now becoming real. And Hayden comes back as Anakin because he is Ahsoka's master. And you watch Hayden Christensen with Dave Filoni's writing and Dave Filoni's direction versus prequel Hayden Christensen with George Lucas's writing, it is night and day. You immediately go, that's Anakin Skywalker. I see him. That's a cool guy. I fucking like that guy. In the prequels, and it's clear now with Natalie Portman's dialogue, fuck, this dialogue is wooden. You're no longer a slave.
Yeah, and
are you an angel?
Writing good writing can make mediocres look better and bad actors mediocre.
Yes.
Bad dialogue will make great actors look mediocre and mediocre actors
Horrible.
look fucking awful.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Madam Web at its finest.
Yeah.
Because
That's a great example, yeah.
I don't think Dakota Johnson's that great of an actress.
No.
But I don't think she's as bad as Madam Web makes her out to be.
No, she's definitely better than them.
I've seen enough episodes of Euphoria to know Sydney Sweeney in some way, shape, or form can act at some level. Not Madam Web. And for context, we just covered Madam Web in the last episode that we did together. So to our audience, but here we've left Naboo. We get to Tatooine, and we're just given expositional dump after expositional dump of Tatooine. Yeah. Oh, they're slaves. I am Anakin. I am a slave. I'm supposed to love Padme. Are you an angel? Qui-Gon, I gotta find parts. I can't mind trick people. Also, he's using Jedi mind trick like it's nobody's business throughout this film. All the fucking time in the first 30 to 60 minutes.
You can take any actor in the world and they wouldn't be able to make that "Are you an angel" line work.
Yeah, pretty much. Unless it was done in jest. Unless it was done as like, Deadpool, are you an angel?
Yeah, it's in earnest. So
yeah, and like I can see why George may have wrote it and said maybe this is what a kid would say, but it doesn't work.
And also, why I'm assuming George Lucas knew inevitably Padme and Anakin are going to get together romantically.
Yes.
Why set them up with an almost sibling relationship? That's not going to please anyone when it turns romantic.
Right, and the thing is you could have, like, again, if we go back to that idea of making Anakin older, Padme, I believe, is supposed to be 14, which is, it does not come off that way, but I think Padme is supposed to be 14. Anakin's 9. I don't care if she's 14, 16, whatever. You could have just give them like a 2-year age gap. And you could have said, you maybe could have started them off as, oh, that's that obnoxious kid brother of mine vibe, even though they're not siblings. And then go, holy shit, no, like, he's real. I like this kid. I love him. And get them there if there's less of an age gap. It won't feel sibling-ish, which is another reason why when you get to Attack of the Clones, you're just like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What are we doing?
No. Well, it's not only that, but it's like kind of awkward and you don't want to see it.
No, you don't want to see it. It makes you. It gives you the ick. You don't want someone to feel the ick, and that's, to me, honestly, outside of the introduction of Darth Maul, I don't know if there's a single thing on Tatooine that doesn't give me the ick. The pod race is fun, but needs to be shorter.
Yeah.
I do like the pod race. I think the pod race, especially for the time, the pod race is like, holy fuck. Now, in modern context.
It at least reveals character for Anakin.
Yes.
Better than any dialogue.
That's the best part of character development of Anakin, because the dialogue, it shows him to be kind. It shows him to be caring. It shows him to do all these things.
Yeah.
But you're getting it in this Jake Lloyd unsuccessful kid actor way, where when he's in the pod, he's getting launched into the fucking sky, and he has enough wherewithal as a child to be able to go, fuck. How do I get back down? And he still goes, crank it, I'm going to get ahead. So he's not thinking just safety. You're setting up the Anakin Skywalker who will take any risk whatsoever to achieve victory. That is great character building. He's going for it all the time.
And you're setting up problems for him to show that he's a capable character.
Yes.
I don't want to like be mean, but I don't know how George Lucas didn't see that was a problem.
I mean, George Lucas. Look at George Lucas's catalog. I've gone back and watched American Graffiti. I was not wowed. It's fine.
It's a yeah, it's good. I think.
It's a fun serial movie with problems, but they kind of end incoherently. Sort of.
Some of the characters are well written. Some of them not so much.
THX, I haven't seen the theatrical THX or the student film. There seems to be interesting things about it, but I don't know enough about THX. Then he's done weird animated movies. He's done all kinds of other stuff that all don't really hit.
Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck. Like all these kinds of things. George is a story architect. He's not the construction crew building it. George is great at going big picture, what are we trying to achieve? George is not good at the nitty-gritty. And the classic line from all the behind the scenes, faster and more intense. Like that's his direction. Faster and more intense.
Yeah. There's
nuances there
quote.
That you can't do.
There's a great quote. I think it must have been right Return of the Jedi. He's being interviewed. I'll read it verbatim. He said, "Special effects are just tools. A means to telling a story. A special effect without a story is pretty much a boring thing." Just follow your own advice, George. Like,
yeah.
That's a perfect way of saying it too. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect example when we tie it back to Jake Lloyd. He doesn't see it. And your question is extremely valid. How does he not? And that was the crazy part is we were of the age that we were supposed to love Anakin. That was we were of the age that we should have wanted to be Anakin. That was the whole point. And at the time, you wanted to be Qui-Gon Jinn, and I wanted to be Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yep.
What does that tell you?
Yeah. The problem is Jake Lloyd is actually okay during like the action sequences because it's just a kid make believe. Every kid does it.
Mm-hmm.
You can go with that. But you cannot deliver this dialogue.
Very much so. Like there are little scenes here or there that get me where I'm like, okay. But then there are scenes where I just go, Jesus Christ, what are we doing? That also just they put him in places to fail. They did not set him up to succeed. Where there's the scene where Qui-Gon comes in to Watto on Tatooine, and it's after their first meeting, and then he says they've concocted the whole plan for the pod race. And he comes in and he's like, I'll take that bet. He makes the wager and all this kind of stuff. Like, either way, you win. And Watto looks over at Anakin as Qui-Gon's walking away, and Jake Lloyd just has to do and it's like telling the kid, cross your arms and look mad, and he has to do the 9-year-old. And it's just so clearly, I am on a stage, I'm telling this kid what to do, he's doing it because I'm telling him to do it, but there's no reaction, there's no in the moment feeling, there's nothing to make it tangible. Yes, there's no real emotion whatsoever. And I think that's where, if you look at the meat of this movie, it is supposed to be on Tatooine. All of the real consequential shit is all on Tatooine. What about Tatooine is successful? Not a thing, except I would say the introduction of Darth Maul, because it's quick, it's to the point. Dark guy in a hooded cloak, they'll get it. It's the same thing he said about Darth Vader. And he's there, he looks evil, he looks menacing, he sends probe droids out, which you already have knowledge about as a Star Wars fan, and you just go, that guy's gonna be a problem. And then right at the end, he picks his moment, and he's like, I'm gonna take him out now. And it doesn't work, but he clearly exhausts Qui-Gon, and he clearly has the better of him. And you go, quick, fast, got it. Good to go.
I think it almost would work better if you took out the pod racing and you put the Emperor with Darth Maul on Tatooine where he senses Anakin. So you start building up the relationship with him and Anakin. You set it up right away.
Yeah.
Then you literally have all your relationships set up in the first movie from the very start.
Yeah. And the other thing is there's expanded universe stuff that it's not technically canon, but they've done so much that it theoretically could be considered canon by some. That the theory is Palpatine created Anakin by the Sith dark arts, immaculate conception shit that he willed Anakin into existence by the manipulation of midichlorians. And if theoretically that were the case, or if we were going down your rabbit hole, if he says, there's my opportunity, I'm going to take it. Yeah, make Senator Palpatine there, and he's secretly communicating the whole time saying, you need to get here. Come here now. We're taking these fuckers out now. And then he goes, nope. Scare them, distract them, make it look good, but I'm going to still play wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm going to watch this kid. I'm going to start puppet mastering this kid. And we don't get that. And, that's another huge issue I have is the Immaculate Conception. I literally just go, Immaculate Conception is not explained enough. It's too...
Oh, I wrote Immaculate Conception equals biggest eye roll of all time. It is... It's just so dumb, honestly. Unless you're going to explain it the way you just said, where somehow the Emperor is so strong with the Force he's able to do that. But they don't set that up. They don't explain that.
No, and I think...
So you're just like, I guess he's Jesus.
And that's where, again, it goes to an inconsistency of mine. In my opinion, you see Palpatine, even as a kid, you see Ian McDiarmid.
It's pretty easy to tell.
You can kind of go, isn't that the same guy? What are we not seeing? Why don't we see this, guys? Why? What are we not understanding here? And that goes to another inconsistency. The Immaculate Conception, it's just like another one of those, what? Did she just insinuate that she didn't have sex with anybody and Anakin just happened? So he's Jesus.
Yep.
He's Jedi Jesus. Whereas if you just would have went with, no, honestly, he is truly the will of the living Force, and you spend a little bit more time with Shmi, and you're trying to figure out more with Anakin, she finally, another one, if we go back to that idea of Shmi is there selling her opportunity to leave for Anakin, one of the things Qui-Gon could even say is, are you understanding of what you're doing? And then you can tell that story, they could do a late night conversation, even she just goes, you see him the way I know who he is. And he just goes, the living Force, and she's like, I don't know how things happened. I'm a slave. I've never had a partner. I've never been able to do this. But by some grace of the galaxy of the universe, I was given this child. And then you go, the Force is saying this is the kid. He is the the Force is the reason this kid exists. Then Qui-Gon can be even more of a believer.
Or you could just go, oh, his dad died when he was a baby. One line, simple. Everyone understands it.
Yep, done.
It doesn't need to be explained.
Either
It doesn't need
way,
to be explained further.
either way, you're there. Either way, you get
Do you
there.
want to talk about the story now?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
I realized when I watched it yesterday, my problem with midichlorians.
All right, go for it.
Finally, the first time I understand why I hate this. It's because at its core, Star Wars is a fantasy. It's a fantasy story.
Yes.
Right? You turn the Force something like emotional, something you feel, something you have to connect with, into something scientific where it's just something that lives inside your blood.
It's genetics. You're saying
it's quantified.
Right, and that's the difference. Is it's another inconsistency because there are I think there's conversations with George. There's definitely conversations with Dave Filoni and other major Star Wars contributors where the Force is a thing that everybody has a connection to. Everybody has something where you could take someone that has no real, like, true Skywalker level, Jedi level connection, and you could theoretically teach them enough to do, like, something where instead of getting the full-fledged Luke Skywalker, I just hold my hand out and the lightsaber comes to me, you might be able to go, with enough training, I can push that over now. Because everyone has a connection to the Force. Just some are stronger than the others. And that would be very reasonable and logical. And the way midichlorians are explained here, it's exactly that. It goes from my feeling, my training in understanding myself and my place in the universe to, I don't know, I got the right blood, so I'm good. Peace.
And the problem is it's quantifiable. They say this is the highest midichlorian count I've ever seen. So it is a measure of something where, as before, it's almost like you could be a Jedi.
Yes.
Because it's something you could connect to.
Yes.
You could train and connect. And now it's just like, oh, I guess we'll take that guy and that guy from that planet, and you can just tell because something in their blood.
Yeah, and also it then invalidates half the Jedi's ideas. Because if you really think about it, like, the Jedi, who have a huge hand in the Republic, even that, like, it's one thing that everyone's shitting all over the new Star Wars series, The Acolyte, and there's a lot of points that are valid. I'm enjoying it. I just know it as, it's not a good Star Wars show, it's just a good show, in my opinion. I think it's compelling, just not a good Star Wars show. Is that they're really looking at how the Jedi turn themselves into the police force of the galaxy. They weren't just someone that said, in times of need, we're here for you, but really we're just a bunch of monks that study and train to help. Instead, they turn themselves into a police force. If they have so much power, why in fuck would the Jedi not just try to go, we need everybody in the entire galaxy to take a blood test? Because then they would go, high midichlorian, we gotta go get that kid. High midichlorian, we gotta go get that kid. And it's almost like Professor X, who's like, this mutant is in need. If I help them, they can be a force for good. If I don't, they can go down a really bad path. So I'm gonna do the lesser of two evils, and I'm gonna go take that kid in and give them a home.
But in X-Men even, it's a genetic thing, but it's also, you can train and get better.
Yes.
Like, this is like, to the point where it's just like, oh, Anakin's strong because he has more midichlorians than most people.
And the other thing is this, is like, it's the explanation is so very much a quantifiable thing, as you're saying. You could have easily said, it's like an EKG. An EKG by itself, for your heart, or in any health test, an EKG really isn't worth all that much. But when you go and take an EKG and you get an alarming sign, the doctor goes, we need to do more. We're just seeing if this is
Yeah.
closer to normal, and then this is our first test. This is phase 1 of 7 or 6 or whatever. You could even bring up the idea of midichlorians if you really wanted to, even though I don't think it's necessary. But then you could have done this. We've never seen any true bearing that high midichlorian count immediately means you are going to be a great force wielder. You could even say Master Yoda has a lower count than Master Mundi or even Obi-Wan, but through his hundreds of years of training, Yoda has become this. We just find that the majority of the Jedi have a higher than average midichlorian count. So we think this could be the first signs of trying to find people, which is why we do this. Then you could kind of go, okay, there's a reason they're doing this, but it's not the ultimate determinant. But the way they do it, it's just like, this kid's spiking. We got to take him now. He's going to be amazing because he has this high number. And you're like, it's the NFL Combine. He does a 40 and the fastest, and all of a sudden we need to get him.
It's just another moment when you go, why? Anakin's power can be explained in one sentence. Qui-Gon or Yoda can just say, I've never felt a stronger sense of the Force in anyone.
Yep.
That's it. You don't need to explain it further. You still keep the Force as this ethereal thing that works better as a fantasy.
Yeah. And I agree, midichlorians are a bad inclusion. I only give the alternative because at least you can be like, okay, maybe there's a little bit of science to what they're trying to accomplish, but that doesn't mean it's the be all end all. But the way it's done, it gives way too much of an ideology to high number good, low number bad. Hey, mom, you have no midichlorian count. You suck. Like,
yeah.
Like, but
maybe that's why Qui-Gon didn't battle so hard for Shmi. He's like, you're worthless. Fuck you.
I took your blood test while you were sleeping. Your count's 4.
Yeah.
Your son's over 20,000. I gotta take him. It's the same thing. It's why, like, I love. You know it. I'm sure you've seen it on the internet. Where the classic Dragon Ball Z, the first time Vegeta and God, what's the other saying? It's gonna drive me crazy. But they have the little sensor goggle, and they're like, it's over 9,000. And it just completely invalidates all their ideas because it shows like, oh shit, Goku's a menace, but also it shows, no, this is flawed and they really don't always know what they're doing. That's perfect. Where someone you could have said someone from the temple, even like you could say like a young librarian type or a young Jedi scientist who's trying to push forward something with Jedi. Could have said like, I'm telling you, we need to do more midichlorian counts, and Yoda could be like, mine's like 5, and I'm better than everybody. What are you talking about? Then immediately you go, okay, maybe there's something, but it's not always right.
Or you have Yoda say, I can sense the Force. I don't need to know.
Yeah. Also true.
It's just so stupid. And it's unnecessary. It adds more time to the story, which you don't need.
Yeah. And then we leave Tatooine, and all hell breaks loose, dude.
I had one more note on Tatooine, and that's that CG Jabba looks fucking awful. That's one piece of this movie that does not hold up at all.
I would say this. It doesn't look great by today's standards. At the time, that was really good. And sure. I don't think it looks awful, but yeah, it's the one piece of all the CGI after all the remakes, all the remasters, all the retouching that's been done. That's the one where you go, We could get a little bit more, boys. We could try a little bit better.
Yeah. Even when you just compare it to the other CG in this movie,
Yeah,
it's really bad.
yeah. Jabba could
And then,
use some workup. Yeah,
and I don't understand why you already proved you can make a Jabba realistic model
yeah.
or puppet. What? It's so much easier. You would think.
But is it cheaper?
At that time, I bet it is.
Probably. Probably. Yeah.
Nowadays, definitely.
Oh yeah, it's definitely cheaper on the computer now, but yeah. Again, the pod race is flawed but cool, but it gets to be too long.
Actually, do you remember if Jabba at one point was not CG? Do you know that?
No, I don't know. I think he was always CG'd.
Okay. Because I was going to say maybe he did that during the re-releases of all of them.
Yeah, the only one that I believe the only one that was full conversion that was beyond obvious but like essential was Yoda. Because they had an ugly ass Yoda puppet, and then Attack of the Clones they go CGI. And then now in the remasters they went back and they redid Yoda in the CGI. Yeah, the second we leave Tatooine, oh, this movie unravels hard. It's
What's immediately after that?
we go to so we get that the cruiser goes to Coruscant, and we're told Coruscant, Coruscant, Coruscant. The Senate, they're so important. The Senate. We're on Coruscant for like 15 minutes max, and it's mostly Anakin going around talking to people in some way, shape, or form. We get all the Jedi Temple stuff. We get the Senate is shown to be useless within 10 seconds. It's the only efficient thing George Lucas does in this movie. He's just like, I want to show how inefficient they are. Queen Amidala gets less than a sentence out. She's challenged. Within 2 minutes, it's obvious this entire thing is useless. That is the efficient point. And you're like, but we've been working so hard to get to this. And if you want the vote of no confidence to be impactful, if you want to show the true manipulation, you need to do a lot more of seeing Valorum, the Chancellor, going to Amidala in secret or going in private saying, I'm doing everything I can. I'm being blocked. And after 2, 3, 4 times, finally she just goes, it's not about you, but I need to save my people. But immediately it's just like,
I wrote down.
You just cut his balls off immediately.
Yeah, I wrote down Terrence Stamp is just wasted in this movie.
Wasted. We should be kneeling before Zod, and he is here for like 2 minutes, and we're just chopping his balls off, dude.
Yeah, it's always that classic question you have when you have this great actor, but you give him nothing to do.
Nothing. The most you have is he talks to Qui-Gon once on the pad, and he has to take a seat exasperated and look like he's in shock when someone he's just met stands up for everyone and says, I don't have any confidence for you. Like, you're not good enough. And he has to sit down and be like, you just met her. I mean, you've had talks, I guess, from the other dialogue. You could say we've met through holograms or other stuff like that, but like, you've never... Why would that be so wounding? Why would that matter? No, you'd immediately go, hey, I fucking run this place, and I'm telling you there's a process, and we have to fill the process out. And then people should go, yes, and then when it's finally shown that you failed, then she has a right to say it.
Yeah, I would argue you should be showing that, what is he, Chancellor? Is that the
he's
title?
Chancellor, yeah.
You should be showing that he actually is a good Chancellor, and that Palpatine is really orchestrating this whole thing, and can tell it's clear that he's doing that.
Absolutely. And that's where it's really easy in 2020 hindsight to say that, but that's all movie reviews and critiques in general. But especially when it comes to Star Wars, it's so difficult because again, you can see the master strokes and go, fucking brilliant. But when you see the fine brush strokes that make it what it is, you're like, could have been better. We could have done this. We could have done this. We could have done this. We could have done that. We could have done all these different things. And we didn't get there. We got very much all right, we gotta get Palpatine in power.
Yeah.
And again, if you would have had him, I love your idea of seeing Palpatine on Tatooine, seeing Anakin, because then you could have saw, I'm already manipulating things. I'm changing my entire plan for this kid.
Yeah, and later when he arrives at Coruscant, Anakin,
Yeah,
you could have another scene with him and Palpatine.
very much so. And you could say, hey, you've done so much. I wanted to do you a favor for rescuing us through your brave. I want to take you and show you the world you're about to enter. Because then you could have Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have that private moment at the council, and then you could say simultaneously Palpatine was taking him. And then you could have Anakin go, seems like they only really just argue around here. They don't get anything done. And you could start the manipulation right there. You're like, you're right, son. They do. And you can throw in those little lines of son and I'm a father figure. You can trust me, and start the manipulation immediately and to say, and start his worldview the way you want to, and immediately show,
And
this is poison and it's a problem.
I mean, I haven't given this any thought, and I think this works better. You don't have Anakin as Immaculate Conception. You have him as someone who doesn't have a father. He's never had a father.
Yep.
He died at childbirth, whatever. And then this is his surrogate.
Very much so. And the other thing is you can show the tragedy and the sadness. You can have Qui-Gon die at the end. And then you can say, this is where the tragedy begins. He doesn't have a father figure, and now he gets two. And he gets to have both. And then Qui-Gon tragically passes, and because he's in the custody of the Jedi, he gets Obi-Wan, who's an older brother that he's kind of like, well, I have to stay with Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan cares for him because it's his master's dying wish. But he can always go back to, Obi-Wan's training me, but like Palpatine actually cares about me. I need a father, and he's giving that to me. So at the end, you could have a real reason as to why, even if you want to say the relationship doesn't work well at the beginning with Obi-Wan and Anakin, through 1 and through 2, by 3 it's very clear they like each other, they care about each other, and they've gone through so much together that they are truly brothers. But then you could have this entire time, my dad's telling me you're manipulating me, while he's secretly manipulating. And then you can believe it. You can go, how do you not see it? You're losing everything because you're listening to this manipulator. And it makes it so much more tragic and so much more sad that he's giving all this up for Palpatine.
But
not Obi-Wan or Padme.
To go further with that idea, you could have Palpatine like pretty much say, I'll raise this child. Because then it also mirrors the whole idea of Luke and Leia. They aren't really with their parents. It mirrors the original trilogy, and it sets up the tragedy.
And that's the other thing. You could do that, and in the same moment, you could either give him Anakin, or the Jedi could say, we brought him in, we're going to honor Qui-Gon's dying wish, Obi-Wan's going to train him, and then Anakin in the back of the head, anytime he has doubts, could say, I could have been with Palpatine, and you took him away from me. And I only get him in little special moments. I don't get him as the parent I should have had. So many ways to do this, and we're going this route. And the Jedi Council, I'm just asking you this. Does it appear that any of them have any true wisdom or smarts the way they're presented in Phantom Menace?
Nope.
Mace Windu, number one, is always a dick, and I know you love Mace Windu because it's just Sam Jackson,
Yeah.
but Mace Windu is shown to be a fucking asshole immediately. Where he's
Yeah.
just so like you can say he's not a believer. You can get that he obviously doesn't care about the Jedi prophecy of the one that'll bring balance. But if that's
Mhm.
theoretically the biggest prophecy in the world, biggest prophecy in the galaxy, that could theoretically bring the ultimate balance of the Force,
Yeah.
and you're telling me one of your guys, he may be a maverick, he may go rogue, but one of your guys says, I found a kid who, untrained, has no ability to tap in, did all of these things, and I truly believe this, maybe your first reaction shouldn't be, ugh. And his first reaction is a literal eye roll and like, bring him before us. And you're like, you're going to give up the chance to possibly get the most powerful being ever on your team. Who cares if he's wrong? Try it. But instead, he's just like, this is so inconvenient.
Yeah. Well, I think he just went with the simplest route, which is, oh, I need to show Mace Windu a little bit of character with him, so let's just make him a dick, and he'll just be that one note the whole time.
Oh, it's so bad. And Yoda even doesn't seem wise, Master Yoda. He doesn't seem
No,
that
not at all.
wise. He's just like, you're not following the rules. And Qui-Gon's like, yeah, but look at all the shit I'm telling you. There might be a Sith Lord. They all
Yeah.
go, no, you're wrong. And he's like, I saw it. I have witnesses. I saw it. Motherfucker had a red lightsaber and in black cloak. And he came to kill us. He's not a Jedi. He's not a Force wielder. He's a Sith. No. We'd be too good for that. There's no way that could happen. And you're like, you arrogant fucks are a bunch of morons. So, on Coruscant, the whole movie builds to Queen Amidala's got to get to the Senate, and maybe they'll have a chance. She's immediately cut down. We got to get Anakin to the Jedi Temple. We got to start his training. And immediately, nope, fuck you. But you can keep babysitting if you want to. Like, that's literally what they essentially tell him.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then it's just Padme goes, fuck this, I'm going back. Like, I'm out. This place sucks. You're not doing anything. We're out.
I actually like her scene in front of the Senate where she's arguing, hey, you're not being effective. We need to do something.
Yeah.
That's actually an okay scene.
It is.
Yeah, when you add in everything else, it's just...
Yeah, and it just so much so...
Yes.
It so much so shows the inconsistencies where moments can happen where someone can rise above what they're given. But they can't overcome. It's kind of like watching a great player in a football game. A great, like Calvin Johnson when he's on the Detroit Lions. He can catch almost 300 yards in a game for 3 touchdowns over 4 people, and they will lose. Because the rest of the team is so bad that he can't just overcome it by himself. He can look great doing it, but he can't just will the Lions into existence at that time to win a Super Bowl because they're just so bad. That scene shows, whoa, Natalie Portman can convey sadness and she can convey this, I am heartbroken and you guys can't help me. It slightly comes through there. I'm not saying it's the greatest piece of acting ever, but it comes through. The message gets across and you kind of feel it a little bit. And yet, right after, we're right back to Naboo and we're right back to the shitstorm.
The football metaphor is a perfect metaphor. You can have one good player, you can have a couple good players, but if your whole team and your whole coaching setup is dog shit, you're going to make dog shit stuff.
Yes.
Like, George Lucas is the head coach, arguably. You know?
Absolutely, yeah.
He's calling the show. And if you have poor leadership from the beginning, it ain't going to be pretty.
Exactly. And that's where so difficult to see moments of good. That character, like, he does, you said it, he does wonders character building Anakin when Anakin doesn't say a word in the pod race. You know that character in the pod race. He didn't say a word. And then there's the rest of the movie.
Anytime someone talks, that's where the problems start.
And we're here, and we're starting to finally care about Qui-Gon one iota, because we're starting to see actual goodness, actual care, actual belief in the right thing to do. Where he just goes, he needs to be trained. No. And he's like, all right, fine, I'll break the rules. I don't care. I'm going to train him. And they're like, no, you won't. And he's like, yes, I will. I will do this. You can't. You're going to abandon Obi-Wan. He's like, he's ready. He's fine. Fucking give him the trials right now. But I'm taking this kid because it's the right thing to do. And he doesn't abandon him. And you're like, this is the good man that we're being told he is the entire time. But all of his dialogue and actions says completely otherwise to this prior. And then we make it back to Naboo. And it's it's all jumbled mess.
I should have looked at the time marker. Because what would you say really the action starts once the Gungans and Padme reach an agreement, right?
You're essentially 1:30 into the movie, like 1:25, 1:30.
So you're leaving a lot for what is ultimately a climax.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the movie.
A lot, yeah.
And then when you compare that to A New Hope, which is really good structure, what's the attack on the Death Star? Maybe 15 minutes? Maybe?
At the end of the movie, including everything? Maybe? Yeah. 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's not 40 minutes of 4 different fucking battles happening.
Yeah. And also, like, this is where you just go. Trade Federation's taken over. But what have they really taken over? They haven't destroyed anything. They haven't done anything. They just said, ours. They don't find the Gungans. The Gungans are just, like, chilling, living out in the forest. And they're like, they haven't found us yet. We get the big reveal that Padme is Queen Amidala. Cool. Whatever.
Oh, that is the dumbest reveal I think I maybe have ever seen. It is
the way it's done is poor.
Yeah, you're revealing it at a time when it has no consequence. It's like who cares? Just have Padme as Padme right away. There's no need to reveal that.
Again, you could easily do if she's so young, she's portrayed as this wise elder kind of character, but she's so clearly young. And then you want her to be this trilogy's Leia, where she's in the action. She does shit.
Where she takes on responsibility, yeah.
And that's where I would have just, if it were me and you said this is the pieces you have to use, I would have said, we need to make her look petulant in the right way. Where Qui-Gon's like, you will get fucked up. You will die, or there is a good chance you will die if you come with me. And she says, I'm here to save my people. I do not care if I'm a Jedi. I'm going. And put her in harm's way. And then you go, that's a real motherfucker. That's a ride or die. We gotta keep her around because, yeah, she's not Qui-Gon. She's not Obi-Wan. She's not a Jedi. But she's trying to hold her own because she believes in her people. And you go, yeah, it's a good person.
Yeah, you have her like Leia, where she's not doing really any action, but she's a leader and you understand her role in the system.
Yes. And the reveal, like, even if you just said take the pieces as they are now, the Gungans could say, you gave up our home planet. You're the reason we're in this mess right now, is you left. And let's say you take the decoy and they're like, we're going to kill you to make an example to show we're in control. And then she just goes,
Mhm.
do not do that. She's not the queen, I am. And then she can prove it. And you go, she's willing to sacrifice herself to save the woman that serves behind her. There's more consequence to that. But instead, nope, I'm the queen. And they just go, oh, like everyone's just like, what? It's just like
Yeah.
one person stepped
Or
forward and just said, yeah, I'm queen. That's all that happened.
or you ultimately or you ultimately just wait until Attack of the Clones when the actual decoy is killed.
Mm-hmm.
Then it has consequence.
Yeah.
This does not.
Zero consequence at all. And then all the action that you ultimately probably don't care about begins.
Yeah.
Of the 4 fights, how many do you care about as a viewer?
Well, I mean, because the rest of the movie is bad, I don't really care for any of them. But of the 4, it's Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
There's one. There's
That's
one.
it.
Like,
That's it.
well, that's the other thing that sucks is it goes back to one of your bigger questions earlier on. Who are you supposed to care about? The whole space fight is designed to care about Anakin. But
Yeah.
again, he's too young in this showing. Where if he was at least early teens, you could say, no, he's a savant. Like he's Doogie Howser.
And
Like we believe in him.
I thought a way better moment when he gets into that ship, it would have been 10 times better had he made the choice to go follow the other ships and go out to battle. It's giving him character. It's not just him, being forced into a situation. It's him making a decision.
Yes. And so he's stuck in space, and it's a 9-year-old just like outdoing super sophisticated Star Wars AI.
Who's never been in a spaceship or driven a spaceship.
He's never driven a spaceship. He's never piloted before outside of a pod racer.
Yeah. Which is 2 feet off the ground.
Yeah, like that's the equivalent of. Do you remember when we went to North Carolina for vacation? And you and I just like I just drove us around in that golf cart the entire fucking week because we didn't have much to do. That's the equivalent of me driving that golf cart around and then fucking American Airlines saying, "Why don't you just pilot this 747 when you get back to the airport to fly home?" And I'm like, "Yep, got it." It's kind of the equivalent of it.
Or just being thrown on the Autobahn and being forced to drive.
Very much so. It's literally like golf cart or like fucking Maverick from Top Gun. Yeah, he's my wingman now. And I'm just like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Taking out the Russians. Let's go. Like, no. And that's where it loses tangibility. It loses that thing.
And also, I don't know why they had a perfect setup for a great moment, which is also a callback, but also would work in the story. Qui-Gon dies, just like Obi-Wan died. You could have him force talk, to Anakin in that moment where he needs him.
Mm-hmm.
It would work in the story and also work as a callback.
Yeah. And people would have been like, "Oh, we get it." And then another thing that could have helped the whole Qui-Gon transition later with Obi-Wan. The reason Obi-Wan and Yoda could finally like figure that shit out is they're like, we need to be more like him. We need to all understand our mistakes. So it allows Obi-Wan, when he appears older and wiser, to say, "My master had more tricks than I gave him credit for." And I should have listened more, because Anakin could have been like, "No, I heard Qui-Gon. He was talking me through this entire thing." And at first, Obi-Wan can be the young, brash Jedi saying, "There's no goddamn way you're telling me the truth. That's not right." And be shown, no, that's wrong. Qui-Gon's actually here.
And it would show Anakin's strong sense of the Force.
Absolutely. That he can grasp into the netherworld to someone who just died, who's just figuring this shit out. He can grasp onto it, just like Luke. You understand, well, this is the lineage. The Skywalkers are just special.
Yeah.
That is a great idea that I've never thought about. I never thought about. Why don't you just put it here?
I literally just thought of it 2 seconds ago.
But we have a space battle to make us care about a 9-year-old who only goes in by accident.
Yeah.
And again, it's weird. He's so willing to take risks, but he's also the biggest rule follower possible. Well, Qui-Gon said I can't move, so I can't move. I can't. It's like, for the audience that doesn't know, I work in childcare. Up for the next 3 days as of recording, 3 days of this I have left in childcare, and then I'm starting my move back to the Midwest. But the kids that tell me, well, my dad said I couldn't do this, but it's like a rule that they got told like 3 years ago that's clearly out of date, that doesn't make sense to what we're doing. And I'm like, but they're not here. They told you that years ago when the context was very different. I even had a conversation with them saying, no, it's fine, don't worry about it. But you're just like, no, my dad said I couldn't do that. And you're like, so you're totally fine risking your life and doing this shit as long as you didn't choose to do it. But because it happened, then you're like, okay, it's fine now.
Yeah, and it would work 10 times better for his character if he just made the choices. You can show that he's willing to take risks. He's not always going to be the smartest person, but, you know, he's risky. He's
Maverick.
He's not always going to be logical. He's like Maverick, where he's just going to push a little too far. He's going to do stuff that you don't agree with, and that sets up the character.
Well, that's why I highly suggest anyone who wants to love Star Wars watch the Clone Wars. That is who Anakin is in the Clone Wars. Everyone goes, when they see Anakin Skywalker, people who meet him, they do a really good job setting up in that show. No, Anakin Skywalker's a big deal. And when people start making fun of that and going, oh, the great Anakin Skywalker, he just jumps headfirst into a pool of sharks, and out of some absurd plan, he makes it work because he's special, because he's Anakin Skywalker. He's the chosen one. And you like Anakin in that show, where none of these movies make you like Anakin whatsoever. But the show, you're like, I would
almost argue that you dislike Anakin most this trilogy.
Absolutely. And that's where you go from a space battle to the Gungans taking on the droids. Do you care about the Gungans at all?
No. And I wrote down, Jar Jar Binks is the Forrest Gump of this world. He just falls ass backwards into great things.
But like Forrest Gump was done in a way that showed it was truly like happenstance. He was more of an observer of history than he like did something. Jar Jar's like fallen, but he's throwing grenades on accident. He's like, oh no, I can't catch the grenade, but it's gonna go straight into the tank to take the tank out. Like, what are we doing? And also, why do you care? It's machines versus an entire race of people, and a race of alien. It's not even a race of human beings, theoretically, even though you're supposed to connect with human emotions to them. But your only point of reference for the Gungans is Jar Jar, who's not likable.
Yes.
So you're kind of like...
Not at all.
You're kind of like... What if the droids won? It wouldn't be good. But...
Oh, also in that battle, they show the other Gungan who has like catfish
the whiskers
things, you know?
Yeah.
Who has the worst line of dialogue in this movie. He goes, Yusa and Big Doo-Doo.
Oh yeah, that's so bad.
It's baffling.
Bafflingly bad. And I think it's just better if we don't even discuss that battle because it's just like whatever. That's
I don't think we don't need to talk about Padme's thing at the end or the Gungans.
so that I want to talk about Padme just a hair, but not a lot. The only thing I can say about
Okay.
the Gungans that's relevant is this. That is the biggest masturbatory waste of film ever. It's just like,
Yeah.
why'd you do this? Because we could. And you're like,
No, because it's bold.
yeah, it's bold. So we have that. And then I do think it's important to touch on Padme because of this. We're clearly trying to echo Leia. We're truly trying to show I'm a queen, I want to do this. But what about this entire movie up to that point has shown you Padme might be ready for this?
Yeah.
Fucking zero. Zilch, nada. Fucking nothing. And then you're just like, oh yeah, she could go Mission Impossible up this fucking wall. It'll be fine.
The most action she's had before that is walking.
Yes! That's it. Or quick jogging through the streets trying to get away. But that's it. What are we doing? And who cares whatsoever about what they're doing?
Yeah.
And then we get to the real creme de la creme. The reason people could like this movie.
Yeah.
Duel of the Fates is intoxicatingly good.
It's a masterpiece.
There's truly a part of me that believes Duel of the Fates is the best piece of music Star Wars has ever created. And that's saying a lot.
I would go the Force theme is better, but that's because it's more emotional. Duel of the Fates is just a banger.
Duel of the Fates is a banger. And also, we can't lie, the Imperial March is pretty fucking rad. It's pretty rad.
Yeah, it is.
But I do understand what you're saying, but Duel of the Fates captures everything you need to know about that.
Yeah, I would say that shows the potential of what Star Wars can be.
And also, that's the fun part. They know Maul exists. They know he's the problem. They're running through the compound, and then Maul just shows up, and they're just like, you guys go? Fucking fight time. And everyone knows it's going to happen, so instead of going, no, let's try to reason, or, they just go, nope, fight time. Lightsabers. And many people would critique that. But I think in a movie that does too much exposition, too much talking, too much waste of time, it's completely fine that they just go, we know he's bad, we know we're good, we're going to take this problem now.
And I will say, the reveal of the double lightsaber is still pretty badass.
Mind-blowingly awesome. Mind-blowingly so.
It still hits.
It still hits. I don't care who you are. That's rad. It's fucking cool.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about this, to tie some of the other stuff that I talked about with behind the scenes and mapping out world, mapping out story. Do you know why it's called Duel of the Fates? Do you really understand that?
I know if the Fates is like something with the Force, but I don't know exactly now.
So the real reason it's titled Duel of the Fates, because the Duel of the Fates, it's really the battle for Anakin's soul. Qui-Gon lives, Anakin will be okay, because he has a good father figure in his life. But Maul is the operative of Palpatine, so if Maul takes out Qui-Gon, or both, game over. Anakin's going to the dark side. So it's really the battle for the soul of Anakin, which is why it's called Duel of the Fates, to determine Anakin's fate. Dave Filoni, who now runs
Yeah.
Star Wars, tells that beautifully and makes this matter
Can I
so
just
much more.
can I just say that title right there is more clever than anything in this movie.
Yeah. And when you look at that fight, it's choreographed beautifully, but there's still grit to it. There's a time that fucking Qui-Gon just goes and fucking backfists Maul, and you're like, believable. You're in a fight to the death. Yeah.
This is one thing I wanted to ask you is, do you prefer this style of dueling over original trilogy?
For the time period, yes.
See, I don't think they've ever gotten dueling quite right. I think it should be kind of a mixture of the two, where it's still emotional, it doesn't look choreographed or anything. Like, this is like overly choreographed.
Yes, but I think here's why I think it does work. We are not in the Star Wars of the hyper grit Empire's destroyed everything, and we have to rebuild, and we've lost all the finesse of the old world. Where we're at the height of decadence, where theoretically people have just studied for years how to just go their entire lifetimes. So at least theoretically, the amazing parts of this duel could happen, and I think it tells a that actually does a lot of world building through the choreography. Whereas
But
when you see Return
it
of the
also
Jedi,
sets up.
well, exactly. So then, but at least there's some explanation later when you're like, well, Vader's not even half a man at that point. So a lot of his the fluid motion of Anakin wouldn't be there anymore. He can't do his backspin flourish move. He can't do that shit anymore because he's got robot arm. And then Luke has never been trained properly. He's just been given a couple books, and Yoda is just like teaching him shit. So it's logical that he would be very much brawler. I'm fucking just swinging away. I think it does world building, but yeah, there's problems to it.
You feel way more emotion when Luke is
Just
dueling with Vader than you do in any of these ones.
yeah. But I also think it's also this. It goes back to your first question when we really started this. Who do you care about in that fight?
I don't care about anyone.
Maul has been on screen for maybe 5 minutes, maybe, and I'm being generous.
Let me ask you this. This is episode 1. Take away the original trilogy. Do you care about Obi-Wan?
No, not at all.
And
Not at this movie. If anything, you're kind of like, I hope that guy gets it. Because he was just
yeah.
His dialogue makes him a prick.
Yeah. And you could almost say, I actually kind of want Darth Maul to win because he's kind of badass.
Yeah, you want Maul to be around. And I think that's one of the things that's like difficult. I've been saying like a lot. It bothers me. But it's one of the things that's very difficult when you watch Clone Wars. They have so many epic lightsaber duels, and then people just like get away because you need the character to keep going. But then all the setup of the big Star Wars that you've been told is big Star Wars, someone's got to die in a lightsaber fight. So like, or something very consequential has to happen in a lightsaber fight, or it's not real. It doesn't matter. So it's very difficult to have that. But it would have been so much better if almost simultaneously Maul gets Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan injures Maul, and Maul's Maul, but Maul's still around, and you could go, Maul's a problem, and now we have a real reason why he's after Obi-Wan.
But also, if Maul escaped, that would also show somewhat of his character because you go, okay, he's not that honorable. He's not going to duel to the end.
No.
He'll just fucking ditch if he has.
Very much so. And that's the thing is, it shows how predatory and much of a bully he is, where when he's on Tatooine, he has the better of Qui-Gon. And Qui-Gon's just like, opportune, I'm out. And this time...
he's just like, I'm...
And that's where we go, if Maul bails because he's overwhelmed, you're like, oh, you're just a bully who can't handle the heat. Sure, you ran away.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, if you want to do the ending as is, you have to make Maul uber dominant, where he feels untouchable. And there's been too many moments where it's been close calls, and then out of nowhere he beats Qui-Gon. So
just think,
he needs to be feeling himself a lot more than, I got it. Oh no, he flipped over me and then he cut me in half and I didn't react.
Yeah. Just think if Obi-Wan doesn't kill him, he just wounds him, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Maul and Obi-Wan as a rivalry. And then instead of General Grievous in Revenge of the Sith, you could have Darth Maul.
Very much so. Well, also you have Maul. Maul can be the public face, and just by the way he looks and the way he's designed to look evil. And that's the other thing I loved about Clone Wars and Rebels. They bring Maul back, right?
Yeah. Well, they do in Solo.
Maul is so good in Clone Wars and Rebels, and he's given so much more character depth, and he's not just this lapdog villain. They show him going through torment. They show him going through, he betrayed me. He left me to die. And my own hatred is the only reason I'm alive. And I will hunt down Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I will make him suffer forever because of what he did to me. And you're like, I fucking buy that shit. I believe it. And I like it. Where here, it's just like, me. Fuck you. Oh, I got cut in half. I'm dead.
Yeah. And like you said, you could have Darth Maul be the face of the dark side, and that would constantly call into question, is Darth Maul really the evil genius behind all this, or is someone else?
It's another callback to Vader. We're always thought to, man, Vader's the big bad, and then all of a sudden, Vader's not the big bad.
Yeah, man, we just rewrote this whole movie and it's 10 times better.
I'm going to have to because I haven't done it. I've been fighting the urge, but I've wanted to start writing notes and be like, when we go to that rewrite episode, what am I rewriting this movie as? Or we could just do it together live on screen, but I think it might be funnier if we do both take a take, or you just go, all right, Dylan's asking the questions, Evan's rewriting episode 1, or, Dylan asked Evan to rewrite Batman versus Superman. He has to do it. Figure it out. And I can do that for you in whatever movie you want to do. So, yeah, I think, and again, it shows so much more inconsistencies. The worst part about that fight, if you actually break it down logically, what's the first Jedi power that we see Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn do?
I'm glad you brought this up. It drove me crazy because this is the first time I realized that. Like, why show super speed if you're not going to use it later?
Why show super speed against two droids that you're pinned? It's difficult, but it's two droids. Also, why couldn't you use the Force to at least kind of push them back? Something. But why show super speed and then show a scene where you could have used super speed and you don't?
Yeah.
I highly recommend people who want to have fun with this go watch Caravan of Garbage. They say that immediately in Caravan of Garbage. They're like, do the Jedi only get one super speed move? They only get one super dash move in their life? And they're just like, we want to take it now.
If anyone listening or watching hasn't seen it, the Red Letter Media Phantom Menace review that was the review of Phantom Menace for a decade.
Yeah.
That's a great walk.
Yeah,
Because they go in.
and that's where you just go, what are you doing? And you could have even used it to your advantage, where you could have said Obi-Wan did everything in his power. He got back on there. He was trying to time it, and he dashed. And you could even have him hit that barrier, that last one, and just go, I dashed. I did everything I could. I got knocked on my ass, and I had to watch my mentor die. And now I have to deal with this. And that is why I'm so motivated.
It wouldn't even be a question, because you don't have to have those beams, barriers. You don't have to have them at that speed. Have them run like Jedi speed, and then that just happens to be quicker. Like, you just time the barrier with his speed.
Also, let's be honest here. Why do those barriers exist? Because...
Oh, I know, right?
It's video game because they do.
Yeah.
And so, at least if you were going to have them, you could have showed like some guards there that are getting concerned, and Maul could have just like had the upper hand, but he's seeing he needs to retreat a little bit for his success, and he just goes, I'm going to behead you, and I'm going to stab you, and now I'm going to this power energy cell thing, or whatever the hell that tunnel is. There's just this tunnel to nothingness, and it's just like, well, why? Well, because we want him to fall into a pit and die.
Yeah. I also wrote, George Lucas has a hard-on for platforms without any railings.
Very much so. He absolutely does.
The Star Wars universe is full of them.
Oh, I love the fake inspection videos online of people like being the safety inspector for the Empire ships, or for like the First Order ships. Yeah, OSHA, and they're just like, not a single hand railing around here. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
And just like Obi-Wan just falls like 50 to 100 feet off a platform and just like eats shit. And he's just like,
yeah,
all right, I'm up. And you're just like, what?
Yeah. I mean, there is great things about that last duel, but overall, I think it's a little too long.
I don't think the duel itself, like if you actually broke that duel down and just watched the duel itself, it's not. But there's too many interludes to the other shit that you don't care about, so it feels like we just get to the fucking point. Whereas I look
that's the real problem.
I look at it this way. Look at Avengers Endgame. When they're all doing the heists to get the Infinity Stones to reverse time. Beyond the time travel shit that obviously always has plot holes because it's time travel, so there's plot holes.
Yeah.
Beyond that, they're doing a lot of inner cuts. But then when you have those big emotional moments, you don't cut away from that.
Yeah, you stick on what's important.
You stick on what's important. When Black Widow sacrifices herself for Hawkeye to get the Soul Stone, do we cut away to go see Ant-Man and the team go steal the other one? No! We watch Black Widow sacrifice herself because that's what's important in the moment. And way too often...
another difference there is you're cutting in other stories that you care about. These ones, you don't.
Correct. And so you're having far too many interludes to other shit that you don't care about whatsoever. And eventually you're just kind of like, hey, lightsabers, cool. Lightsabers, cool. And it's like, just stick with the shit that matters. And so much of that is pacing problems, it's masturbatory bullshit that you don't need.
Yeah.
And it's such a huge ass fucking problem in this movie. And I think that's a great way to sum up everything we've said is Duel of the Fates. Duel of the Fates is obviously very entertaining. The lightsaber battle, Maul, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan. It's very entertaining. But it is kind of when you analyze it for those details that we were talking about, it is truly a microcosm of this film. A lot of flash, a lot of sizzle, no steak, and when you look at the actual cook on that steak, highly problematic things where you just go, why are there no railings? Why are there these magical laser beams that shut when it's convenient but aren't shut when we want the battle to continue? Why is there a pit to nowhere?
Yeah, it really makes me feel sad for all the artists and all the people who set decoration, art direction, costuming. It really makes me feel bad for them because there's a lot of hard work that went into this.
And it looks beautiful. All of it looks
Yeah,
phenomenal. And
all the visual effects pretty good.
it's phenomenal. You can't say that this is not a beautiful, beautiful visually film.
And even Jar Jar Binks, although the character sucks, technologically it's a huge step in visual
It's
effects.
a huge step forward. You Jar Jar is the step before Gollum. Jar Jar is like, whoa, we could do that. And then Peter Jackson and the team over at Lord of the Rings were like, hold my beer. Like,
I'm pretty sure Peter Jackson has said that without Jar Jar, they wouldn't have been able to do Gollum.
yeah. And so you have this movie that visually stunning, world building, flabbergastingly massive and impressive, myth and legend level of like, whoa. But everything to make you emotionally tied to it, it's not there. It's kind of like going through when you're in English class and you do your myths and legends unit. You do a lot of, well, that's cool, but you don't grip onto the myth. You don't go, oh my god, the story of Thor or the story of Hercules or the story of Zeus just ripped at my heartstrings and it made me feel. And I can understand why it was so essential to the culture of the time. You just kind of go, that's really cool. But that's about it.
Honestly, I think you know what this movie is really missing? Marshall Lucas.
Yeah.
She's the one who saved Star Wars. There's been testimony from a lot of people that had she not come in and like edited it down to what its core is, it would have been just as meandering as this.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is there's a great documentary. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but it's The People versus George Lucas. And in some
Yes,
ways,
I've seen it. Yeah,
in some ways, it's very unfair, but in some ways, it's extremely fair.
yeah,
And because it eventually gets to the point where you're like, okay, guys, we get it. George Lucas ruined your childhood. If you didn't like his later stuff, fine, but that doesn't mean he didn't give you 3 films that defined your generation. Even though he didn't
yeah.
direct 2 of them, he was just a very active producer on them and story
Yeah.
writer there. But it's talked about in that documentary. It's talked about so many things. It's exploring way too much shit, and too much is thought about in things that don't matter, and the shit that matters
Yeah.
is not here. There's one of the reasons I brought that up was they brought it up in the documentary. There's something called the Phantom Edit, and it's 70 minutes.
Yeah.
And people online rave about that shit because they're just like, to the point, to the point, to the point. We're rolling at Star Wars, and I liked it. You go, oh, okay.
And if you just took that 70 minutes and added maybe 20 more minutes of stuff that actually mattered, you would have a good movie, probably.
You'd probably have close to a good movie, or at least that was right. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we got the masturbatory mess that was Star Wars Phantom Menace. And then we end with a whole lot of just, again, there's a little nuggets that are good. But it's just like Obi-Wan just finally kind of like, I guess, trying to be like Qui-Gon and listen to his master's words. And he's just like, I'm going to train him. No, you're not. All right, fine, I'll leave then. And they're like, fine, train him. We don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
and then we have the burials. We have the Jedi funeral, and visually, it's great storytelling because Anakin is sandwiched between Palpatine and Padme and Obi-Wan. So it's the
Yeah.
whole. It's oh, look at that scene. It tells the whole story. He's gonna have to decide between Padme and Palpatine. But
If only that relationship was set up earlier.
correct. And then a lot of people would go, "Oh, did you see? Oh, they even set it up there. Whoa!" Like they didn't do that. And then there's just the
Yeah.
random ass celebration that feels completely unearned with the weird lightning ball
Yeah.
thing. And it's just that's the only
Yeah.
callback there is in this movie, really. And you're like, that doesn't even matter. Why do we care?
No. Well, the whole Gungan storyline truly doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all. And
I
that
have a way of ending.
all
I have a
right.
way of ending this when we're doing this.
All right.
I think we should answer two questions at the end. Is this worth a rewatch? And did this movie deserve the box office that it got?
All right. So, and is it worth the box office that it got? I will say, how do you feel about that? Do you want to lead or you want me to lead?
I would argue this movie should be forgotten to the sands of time.
Okay.
And I mean, did it deserve it? Probably, because it's Star Wars. It's always going to be a huge hit.
I'm going to say this. Is it worth the box office money? Absolutely not. Absolutely. Was it good? Should it? It's a classic. It's Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, which spoiler alert, one day we have to watch that movie. Fucking kill me now.
Yeah.
But it's the classic. It's following up a big hit, and this big hit isn't just a big hit. It's the movie of movies. However, I don't think it's worth the box office. It had a lot of people that said, it's the new Star Wars, I gotta go see the new Star Wars, and kept going back to figure out how they felt about it and see the high point moments and not worry. They were worried about the sizzle, they didn't worry about the steak. There's been plenty of movies that I went to in the theater and I just tried to get into, and I was like, I like that. And then when on rewatch or on further assessment, I go, I don't really think that was that good of a movie. Like,
Yeah. I guess to answer that question, it is a better way of you're looking at it, where you're looking at a ratio of quality versus the amount of money it made.
yeah.
So I guess in that, yeah, it doesn't really deserve the box.
So I don't think it deserves it. Is it worth the rewatch? I'm going to give you the wishy-washiest answer ever. It depends. That's where I will go closer to your Star Wars argument. If you are someone who loves Star Wars or fantasy or world building, this is truly essential to understand the story of Star Wars. From the total collective standpoint, not the obvious beats that you need to know. You don't need to see Phantom Menace to really know and love and understand 4, 5, 6, which is truly Star Wars.
Couldn't you also argue, hey, just skip the first two movies, start with Clone Wars, and then go through?
Yeah, that's not wrong. So, if you're saying, is it worth the rewatch just for the movie? No.
Yeah.
Is it worth the rewatch because it's part of this grand fantasy epic that is essential to pop culture and creating pop culture as we know it today? Yes, it's worth a rewatch. But for the merits of the movie alone, absolutely not. It's not worth the rewatch.
Yeah.
I go watch, like when I am weak in the knees and bored and I'm on Disney Plus and I'm like, I'm in a Star Wars place, sure. Every couple of years and I rewatch it, I skip through the vast majority of it and I just look at the little scenes and little pieces I like.
Yeah.
Whereas
There's
if I watch
one.
the originals, I don't do that. I watch Empire start to finish, and I don't skip a beat.
Yeah, I there's one more note I wanted to read out because I thought it was pretty good, and I just noticed it again. I said, "This movie is just like Return of the King, except all the endings are very unsatisfying." Because that's the truth. Return of the King, all the endings you're like, "Oh yes, this is great," and this one you're like, "Okay."
I mean, Return of the King is legitimately viewed as one of the greatest films ever made, and
It is a masterpiece.
it's a cinematic masterpiece in the greatest fantasy world ever made. And this is, how do I piss on your parade? Like,
Yeah,
how do I ruin that? How do I ruin that inner child with this many battles? And you just go, fuck. Like,
yeah,
this is like
and I guess
this movie to me is the equivalent of, you're with your buddies, and they know you've told them 100 stories about your other buddy, but they've never met him, and they're primed to like that buddy. And they're like, oh my god, we're finally gonna get to meet this guy. He's amazing. We've heard so much, and then you meet him, and they immediately just hate each other, and they're just like, and
yeah,
inside you're just crushed because your social circle is now just imploded because
yeah,
you built this up into such a failure.
yeah. Or it's like you say, "Oh, he's the funniest person alive,"
Uh
and then they meet, and then there's just no laughs.
huh. No laughs. Yeah, that's this movie. It's hurtful. It is that. So, whew, we've done almost 3 hours on the Phantom Menace, which is absurd.
It is absurd,
But
yes.
don't worry, we did more of a runtime for this than the actual movie. So,
Yeah.
alrighty. Now, as part of this project, we've answered our two big questions that I think we're gonna answer. We're gonna ask for all of these. We're gonna occasionally pick specifically the movies that we're gonna do as part of this box office number one hits series that we're doing. However, we're gonna choose a movie at random as well.
Yes.
What is the first year you want to start as the cap? Do we want to say 65 and forward?
I think that's a good one, and then if we want to do anything earlier than that, we can just pick it out.
Yeah, so let's do 65 and forward. So 65, we're in 2024, so really we have 60 years.
So I just pulled up a random number generator.
That is what I was about to ask you to do. So we have 65 to 2024. We have 60 years. Obviously, we can't do 60 if it pops up because that's 2024 itself.
Well, no, I put the minimum as 1965.
Alrighty. Give us a random number generator. Tell us what year we're going to next.
Oh, one sec. I just closed it on accident.
God damn it. But we're going to randomly select the
Okay,
movie that we are going to watch next time. 1973. All right, what are we watching for
Now let
our
me
next
go to-
show on this one?
Let me go to my research.
You can tell we did not really provide this beforehand.
Well, it was random. So, 1973. We talked about it actually earlier, not on camera, but
Yeah.
The Exorcist.
Alrighty, so for the next show in our big box office series, our box office number one hit series per year, we are going to be reviewing and talking about the classic horror film, The Exorcist. And that is going to be
It is.
it's going to be quite the journey, to say the least. I'm excited, but frightened at the same time.
I think we're going to have very different opposing views just like this.
Probably. Well, that's the thing. You and I agreed about the vast majority about the Phantom Menace. I just really love Star Wars, and in this time in your life, you're kind of like, it's fine.
Yeah, I never need to watch another Star Wars movie. I'd be fine with it without ever seeing it again.
Whereas I want new Star Wars as much as possible, as long as it's good. But that is a perfect thing. So on the next ONETA Movie Show, I think we're going to continue with our big box office series, and we're going to be watching 1973's The Exorcist. And it is going to be one heck of a time. But this has been a wonderful crossover episode as the first episode, the first entry into the ONETA Movie Show history, as well as the first big crossover between the ONETA Movie Show and the ONETA Show, the flagship show. Big show, the big reason we are on PTE Creative. This has been a wonderful show. I hope you all had a wonderful time. Dylan, I hope you had some fun as we went 3 hours on the fucking Phantom Menace.
Yeah, maybe a little over. Maybe just like the movie, it's a little overwrought, but
We had a lot to talk about. And to be fair, we got a great idea for a new show as well. Or a new show idea as well. So it was worthwhile. But that is going to do it here on the show today. If you liked what you saw, you liked what you listened to, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, leave us that review. We don't care if it's 1 star or 5 stars. We just want to get the feedback so we can know. Go check out our Etsy shop. It's ptecreative.etsy.com. ptecreative.etsy.com. Help us make money because we'd really like that. It'd be really cool. You'd be supporting good people if you did that. But more importantly than anything, enjoy your day and thank you for the support. Peace out, friends. We love you. Bye.